of Americans who do have a good heart. They also need a leader to match that, and I will be a president that matches that.
Senator Booker, you have said, quote, the real question isn't who is or isn't a racist, it's who's going to do something about it. Senator, what do you plan to do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I want to hit that point because we know Donald Trump's a racist, but there is no red badge of courage for calling him that. When racism exists, the question isn't who isn't a racist, it's who is and isn't doing something about racism. And this is not just an issue that started yesterday. It's not just an issue that we hear a president that can't condemn white supremacy. We have systemic racism that is eroding our nation from healthcare to the criminal justice system. And it's nice to go all the way back to slavery, but dear God, we have a criminal justice system that is so racially biased. We have more African Americans under criminal supervision today than all the slaves in 1850. We have to come at this issue attacking systemic racism, having the courage to call it out and having a plan to do something about it. If I am president of the United States, we will create an office in the White House to deal with the problem of white supremacy and hate crimes. And we will make sure that systemic racism is dealt with in substantive plans, from criminal justice reform to the disparities in healthcare to even one that we don't talk about enough, which is the racism that we see in environmental injustice in communities of color all around this country.
So I'll be pausing it every once in a while so I'm getting no copyright strike or whatnot. Probably gonna pause it right now, actually.
Community. You've also said that anyone who votes to re-elect President Trump is at best looking the other way on racism. Does that sort of talk alienate voters and potentially deepen divisions in our country?
I believe what's deepened divisions in the country is the conduct of this president, and we have a chance to change all of that. Look, systemic racism preceded this president, and even when we defeat him, it will be with us. That's why we need a systemic approach to dismantle it. It's not enough to just take a racist policy, replace it with a neutral one, and expect things will just get better on their own. Harms
I'm not really sure what racist policies you're talking about, but
saved compound, so does a dollar stolen.
There are some,
and we know that the generational theft of the descendants of slaves is part of why everything from housing to education to health to employment basically puts us in two different countries.
I don't know how to beat this copyright strike. We're going to figure it out.
Comprehensive vision to tackle systemic racism in every one of these areas. Marshalling as many resources as went into the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe, but this time a Douglas Plan that we invest right here at home, to make sure that we're not only dealing with things like the over-incarceration of black Americans, but also black solutions, entrepreneurship, raising to 25% the target for the federal government to do business with minority-owned businesses, investing in HBCUs that are training and educating the next generation of entrepreneurs. We can't.
So I will be pausing the audio every once in a while and give my little speech on something, so we're going to miss a lot, because last time I was streaming this, I got a copyright strike, and they cut my live stream short, and I didn't get to go too much further. So I'll be bringing that up every once in a while, if just in case people were wondering why I paused the audio. It's because I got a copyright strike last time I was doing this. So yeah, let's get back to it.
It does contradict some of your prior positions. Among them, you used to oppose the legalization of marijuana, now you don't. You used to oppose outside investigations of police shootings, now you don't. You've said that you changed on these and other things because you were, quote, swimming against the current, and thankfully the currents have changed. But when you had the power, why didn't you try to effect change then?
That's a good question, Kamala. What you got? I like when they smile. It's like they know.
And there have been many distortions of my record. Let me be very clear. I made a decision to become a prosecutor for two reasons. One, I've always wanted to protect people and keep them safe. And second, I was born knowing about how this criminal justice system in America has worked in a way that has been informed by racial bias. And I could tell you extensively about the experiences I and my family members have personally had.
I'm just going to verify real quick that the audio is working.
That if I was going to have the ability to reform the system, I would try to do it from the inside. And so I took on the position that allowed me, without asking permission, to create one of the first in the nation initiatives that was a model and became a national model around people who were arrested for drugs and getting them jobs. I created one of the first in the nation requirements that a state law enforcement agency would have to wear cameras and keep them on full time. I created one of the first in the nation trainings for police officer on the issue of racial bias and the need to reform the system. Was I able to get enough done? Absolutely not. But my plan has been described by activists as being a bold and comprehensive plan that is about ending mass incarceration, about taking the profit out of the criminal justice system. I plan on shutting down for-profit prisons on day one. It will be about what we need to do.
You can hear me good. Hear it good.
To hold law enforcement, including prosecutors. We de-incarcerate women and children, that we end solitary confinement, and that we work on keeping families intact. And as President of the United States, knowing the system from the inside, I will have the ability to be an effective leader and get this job complete.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Senator Klobuchar, during your 8 years as a prosecutor in Minnesota, there were dozens of incidents where black men were killed by police. Critics say that too often you sided with police in these cases. The ACLU's legal director in Minnesota has said that you showed no interest in racial justice. Do you wish now that you had done more?
That's not my record. We are here at a historically black college. And I think of an alum of that college, Barbara Jordan, and something that she once said. She said, what the people want is simple. They want a country as good as its promise. And that same can be said of the criminal justice system. So when I was there, the way we handled these police shootings, I actually took a stand to make sure outside investigators handled them. I took on our major police chief in Minneapolis, but in the prosecutor's office, they were handled with the grand jury. That's how they were all handled across our state. I now believe it is better for accountability if the prosecutor handles them and makes those decisions herself. That aside, I am proud of the work our staff did, 400 people in our office. The cases that came to us, the African-American community that came to us, they said there was no justice for their little kids. There was a kid named Byron Phillips that was shot on his front porch. No one had bothered to figure out who did it. When I came into that office, we worked with the community groups, we put up billboards, we found the shooter, and we put him in jail. We did the same for the killer of a little girl named Taisha Edwards, who was doing her homework at her kitchen table and was shot through the window. What changes did we make? Go after white-collar crimes in a big way. Diversify the office in a big way. Work with the Innocence Project to make sure we do much better with eyewitness ID. And as a senator and as your president, I will make sure that we don't just do the First Step Act when it comes to criminal sentencing, that we move to the Second Step Act, which means the 90% of people that are incarcerated in local and state jails, let's reduce those sentences for nonviolent offenders, and let's get them jobs and let them vote when they get out of prison.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. You all believe that the war on drugs has put too many Americans behind bars. Vice President Biden, you have a plan to release many nonviolent drug offenders from prison. Senator Booker says that your plan is not ambitious enough. Your response?
Well, first of all, let me say that when I came back from law school, I had a job with a big-time law firm. I left and became a public defender because my state was under siege. When Dr. King was assassinated, we were occupied by the National Guard for 10 months.
Just going to pause right here.
I've been involved from the beginning.
Try to bypass some copyright strike audio, whatever you want to call them. So far, I was kind of late on this one, like for 40 minutes. I had some little issues with the audio and the camera was acting weird, but hopefully right now will be good. Again, I'll be pausing it frequently, at least the audio, just to try to bypass any copyright strikes that may come my way. Again, last time I was doing the last live stream I was doing, it got cut short. YouTube hit me with the copyright strike and wasn't able to finish on YouTube. So now I'm trying to hopefully bypass any of those issues by pausing the audio every once in a while and giving some feedback during the stream. All right, let's unpause it.
from the criminal justice system. And so we have to change the whole way we look at this. And we put people in prison, we have to equip them when they get out. Nobody who got in prison for marijuana, for example, immediately upon being released, they shouldn't be in there for that should be a misdemeanor. They should be out and their record should be expunged. Every single right should be returned. When you finish your term in prison, you should be able not only vote, but have access to Pell Grants, have access to be able to get housing, have access to be able to move along the way. I've laid out a detailed plan along those lines.
There's nothing wrong with that,
the fact
really.
is we've learned so much more.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator Booker, 45 seconds to respond.
Our criminal justice system is so savagely broken. There's no difference in America between blacks, whites, and Latinos for using drugs or dealing drugs. But if you're African American, you're almost 4 times more likely to be arrested and incarcerated, destroying your lives. And so much of this comes down to privilege. We have a criminal justice system that Brian Stevenson says treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. And so I have challenged this whole field. We can specifically and demonstratively now show that there are 17,000 people unjustly incarcerated in America, and all of us should come forward and say, when we are president of the United States, when I am president of the United States, we will release them. And let me be specific. I joined together and led in the United States Senate the only major bipartisan bill passed under this president for criminal justice reform that has already led to thousands of people coming out of jail. If 87 members of the United States Senate says that these sentences are way too long, and we changed it, the United States that has already led major bipartisan, and let me be, should come forward and say, when we are president of the United States, when I am president of the United States, we will release them. And let me be specific. I joined together and led in the United States Senate the only major bipartisan bill passed under this president for criminal justice reform that has already led to thousands of people coming out of jail. If 87 members of the United States Senate says that these sentences are way too long, and we changed it, but we didn't make it retroactive, we could literally point to the people that are in jail unjustly right now. Everyone on this stage should say that we are going to give clemency to these 17,000 people. And I challenge you, don't just say big statements, back it up with details of the people in prison right now looking for one of the most sacrosanct ideals of this nation, which is liberty and freedom.
Hey, what that cameraman doing?
Reform the
Hold up.
system, and we must do it now. Every day we wait is too long.
Thank you, Lindsay. I want to turn to the deadly mass shootings here in this country, and of course we are all mindful tonight of where we stand. We are here in Texas tonight, where 29 people have lost their lives in just the last month alone. El Paso, which we've discussed, in Odessa, and I know there are survivors from El Paso right here in the hall tonight. Vice President Biden, I do want to direct this to you because we all remember Sandy Hook. 26 people died in that school, 20 of them children. Those first graders would be in 8th grade today. At the time, there was a groundswell in this country to get something done. President Obama asked you to lead the push for gun control. You have often pointed to your ability to reach across the aisle to get things done. But 4 months after Sandy Hook, a measure to require expanded background checks died on the Senate floor. If you couldn't get it done after Sandy Hook, why should voters give you another chance?
Because it got done before. I'm the only one up here who's ever beat the NRA. Only one ever beat the NRA nationally. I'm the guy that brought the Brady Bill into focus and became law. And so that's number one. Number two, after Sandy Hook, a number of things happened. It went from a cause to a movement. Look what's happened now. Mothers, the organization, Mothers Against Violence, gun violence. We've seen what's happened again. Now we have all these young people marching on Washington, making sure that things are going to change. There has been a sea change. Those proposals I put forward for the president had over 50% of members of the NRA supporting them, and overwhelmingly the rest of the people supporting them. Now the numbers are much higher because they realize what I've been saying, and we've all been saying, is correct. Over 90% of the American people think we have to get assault weapons off the street, period, and we have to get buybacks and get them out of their basements. So the point is, things have changed, and things have changed a lot. And now what's happening is, and by the way Beto handled, excuse me for saying Beto, what Congressman...
That's all right. Beto's good.
The way he handled what happened in his hometown is meaningful. To look in the eyes of those people, to see those kids, to understand those parents, you understand the heartache.
But this is the problem.
We are ready to do this.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. You did bring up assault weapons here. You did bring up assault weapons here, and many of you on this stage have talked about executive orders. Senator Harris, you have said that you would take executive action on guns within your first 100 days, including banning imports of AR-15 assault weapons.
That's right.
President Obama, after Sandy Hook, more than 23 executive actions, and yet here we all are today. In recent days, former Vice President Biden has said about executive orders, some really talented people are seeking the nomination. They said, I'm going to issue an executive order. Biden saying there's no constitutional authority to issue that executive order when they say I'm going to eliminate assault weapons, saying you can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the Vice President have a point there?
Some things you can, many things you can't.
Let's let the Senator answer.
Well, I mean, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
Let's be constitutional. We got a constitution.
And yes, we can, because I'll tell you something. The way that I think about this is I've seen more autopsy photographs than I care to tell you. I have attended more police officer funerals than I care to tell you. I have hugged more mothers of homicide victims than I care to tell you. And the idea that we would wait for this Congress, which has just done nothing to act, is just, it is overlooking the fact that every day in America, our babies are going to school to have drills, elementary, middle, and high school students, where they are learning about how they have to hide in a closet or crouch in a corner if there is a mass shooter roaming the hallways of their school. I was talking about this at one of my town halls, and this child, it was 8 years old probably, came up to me. It was like it was a secret between the two of us, and he tugged on my jacket and he said, I had to have one of those drills. It is traumatizing our children. El Paso and Beto, God love you for standing so courageously in the midst of that tragedy. You know, people asked me in El Paso, they said, you know, because I have a long-standing record on this issue, they said, well, do you think Trump is responsible for what happened? And I said, well, look, I mean, obviously he didn't pull the trigger, but he's certainly been tweeting out the ammunition.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, do you still stand by what you said on an executive order?
What I said was, the question, speak to constitutional scholars. If, in fact, we could say, by the way, you can't own the following weapons, period. They cannot be sold anymore. Check with constitutional scholars. Now,
Mr. Vice President,
John,
thank you.
could I tell you
Congressman
what you
O'Rourke, I
could
want to
do
come to you on this.
100 days?
I'm going to work down the row here, but I do want to come to Congressman O'Rourke because I know this is personal to you. El Paso is your hometown. Some on this stage have suggested a voluntary buyback for guns in this country. You've gone further. You said, quote, Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell them to the government, all of them. You know the critics call this confiscation. Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work?
I am, if it's a weapon that was designed to kill people on a battlefield.
All weapons are designed to kill people.
High velocity round, when it hits
on
your
any
body,
field,
shreds everything inside of your body, because it was designed to do that so that you would bleed to death on a battlefield and not be able to get up and kill one of our soldiers. When we see that being used against children, and in Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15, and that mother watched her bleed to death over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
Congressman, thank you.
And I want to say this. I'm listening to the people of this country. The day after I proposed doing that, I went to a gun show in Conway, Arkansas, to meet with those who are selling AR-15s and AK-47s and those who are buying those weapons. And you might be surprised, there was some common ground there. Folks who said, I would willingly give that up, cut it to pieces. I don't need this weapon to hunt, to defend myself. It is a weapon of war. So let's do the right thing, but let's bring everyone in America into the conversation.
You would need it to defend yourself.
Democrats,
somebody who has one, who didn't turn hers in, has one.
I want to bring in Senator Klobuchar.
You might want one.
You've often talked about your uncle and the proud hunters back home in Minnesota. So I wanted to get your response to Congressman O'Rourke tonight. Where do you stand on mandatory gun buybacks?
I so appreciate what the congressman's been doing, and I want to remind people here that what unites us is so much bigger than what divides us. Everyone up here favors an assault weapon ban. Everyone up here favors magazine limitations, which, by the way, would have made a huge difference if that was in place in El Paso, in that store where all those ordinary people showed such extraordinary courage. And certainly in Dayton, Ohio, where in 30 seconds, one man guns down innocent people. The cops got there in 1 minute, and it still wasn't enough to save those people. That's what unites us. You know what else unites us? And I'll tell you this. What unites us is that right now, on Mitch McConnell's desk are 3 bills: universal background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, and passing my bill to make sure that domestic abusers don't get AK-47.
Senator Klobuchar.
We want to get something done. And I personally think we should start with a voluntary buyback program. That's what I think, David. But I want to finish this, because if you want action now, we got to send the message to Mitch McConnell. We can't wait until one of us gets in the White House. We have to pass those bills right now to get this done.
Senator
because
Klobuchar.
we cannot spare another innocent life.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to turn to Senator Booker, because you have said just this week about guns and about the candidates on this stage that the differences do matter. Those were your words. You have argued if you need a license to drive a car in this country, you should have a license to buy a gun. Gun owners would not only have to pass a background check, they would have to obtain a federal license to buy a gun. This would require, as you know, Congress to pass legislation. If Democrats can't get universal background checks, how would you get this done? And can you name one Republican colleague of yours in the Senate right now who would be on board with this idea?
So background checks and gun licensing, these are agreed to by overwhelmingly the majority of Americans. 83% of Americans agree with licensing. This is the issue. Look, I grew up in the suburbs. It was about 20 years ago that I came out of my home when I moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey, and witnessed the aftermath of a shooting. It's one of the reasons why shooting after shooting after shooting in neighborhoods like mine for decades, this has been a crisis for me. It's why I was the first person to come out for gun licensing. And I'm happy that people like Beto O'Rourke are showing such courage now and coming forward and also
Joe Biden
now
2020
licensing. But this is what I'm sorry about. I'm sorry that it had to take issues coming to my neighborhood or personally affecting Beto to suddenly make us demand change. This is a crisis of empathy in our nation. We are never going to solve this crisis if we have to wait for it to personally affect us or our neighborhood or our community before we demand action. You want to know how we get this done? We get this done by having a more courageous empathy where people don't wait for this hell to visit upon their communities. They stand up and understand the truth of what King said, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I will lead change on this issue because I have seen what the carnage creates in communities like mine, because we forget national shootings, these mass shootings are tragedies, but the majority of the homicide victims come from neighborhoods like mine. Nobody has ascended to the White House that will bring more personal passion on this issue. I will fight this and bring a fight to the NRA and the corporate gun lobby like they have never seen before.
Senator Booker, thank you. A quick follow-up, though, because Americans
They're all
watching
lying.
tonight know
They're
the
going to get in
reality
office
of
if they,
Congress
any of
in
them win.
Washington.
They ain't going to do
I
a
asked
dang
you, a
thing.
Republican
Trust
colleague
me.
in the Senate who would be on board with this idea to get this done.
You know, if that was the attitude when Strom Thurmond had the longest filibuster ever on civil rights, if it was this idea that we can't get it done because of the situation in the Senate, I'm looking to lead a movement. The number one reason why governments are formed is to protect the citizenry. Think about this. We have had more people die due to gun violence in my lifetime than every
Can any of these
war in
Congress
this country
or
combined
like
from the
the mayors
Revolutionary
whatnot
War till now.
pass
This
state
is not a
laws
side issue to me.
that bypass
It is a
federal?
central
Well, I guess
issue
not,
to
because
me. That is the
that's a
kind of
constitutional
fight,
right. I
because the
guess
majority of
never mind.
homicide victims, we have a mass shooting every single day in communities like mine. We must awaken a more courageous empathy in this country so that we stand together and fight together and overwhelm those Republicans who are not even representing their constituency, because the majority of Americans, the majority of gun owners agree with me, not the corporate gun lobby. It is time for a movement on this issue, and I will lead it.
Senator Booker, thank you. Senator Warren, I want to come to you next, because you have actually said in recent days that there are things you can get done with Republicans in the Senate. What can you get done on gun control?
So let's start by framing the problem the right way. We have a gun violence problem in this country. The mass shootings are terrible, but they get all the headlines. Children die every day on streets, in neighborhoods, on playgrounds.
First one I seen talk about it like this.
People die from violence, from suicide and domestic
I was about
abuse.
to say, don't.
We have a gun violence problem in this country, and we agree on many steps we could take to fix it. My view on this is it's not gonna be one and done on this. We're gonna do it, and we're gonna have to do it again, and we're gonna have to come back some more until we cut the number of gun deaths in this country significantly. But here's the deal. The question we need to ask is, when we've got this much support across the country, 90% of Americans want to see us do, I like registration, want to see us do background checks, want to get assault weapons off the streets. Why doesn't it happen? And the answer is corruption, pure and simple. We have a Congress that is beholden to the gun industry. And unless we're willing to address that head on and roll back the filibuster, we're not going to get anything done on guns. I was in the United States Senate when 54 senators said, let's do background checks, let's get rid of assault weapons. And with 54 senators, it failed because of the filibuster. Until we attack the systemic problems, we can't get gun reform in this country. We've got to go straight.
I'm still not sure what they mean when they say assault weapons, what they're actually referring to.
So it doesn't just work for the wealthy and well-connected.
That's a generic term, I guess. Can mean anything.
Senator Warren, thank you. You bring up eliminating the filibuster, which means you would need simply a simple majority in a Republican Senate to get something done. I want to turn to Senator Sanders on this, because you've said before of this, if Donald Trump supports ending the filibuster, which he's talked about himself, you should be nervous. Would you support ending the filibuster?
No, but what I would support absolutely is passing major legislation, the gun legislation that people here are talking about, Medicare for all, climate change legislation that saves the planet. I will not wait for 60 votes to make that happen. And you could do it in a variety of ways. You could do that through budget reconciliation law. You have a vice president who will, in fact, tell the Senate what is
I'm gonna have to
appropriate and what is not. What
pause
is
the audio right quick.
And what is not.
So I'm pausing the audio because last time I was streaming this, I got a copy strike by YouTube, and they cut my live stream short. So yeah, so I'm gonna pause the audio every once in a while. But anyways, yeah. But back to the gun debate thing. So Elizabeth Warren was the first one I really heard dig into besides the mass shootings, go into like more urban area crime, and things of that nature, which to me is way more of an issue than mass shootings. Even though, of course, mass shootings is more more people at once, and the other shootings, like inner city shootings, are just a few people here, but it happens way more often, obviously, than mass shootings do, which has a bigger body count, obviously, or people getting injured and stuff like that. Brings audio back, but that's the first person I heard me go into it like that was Elizabeth Warren, and also just about specific events, which is not bad, but they also need to mention all the other shootings that are the main cause of gun deaths, as far as murders in the USA, which is inner city crime, and just, besides mass shootings.
In 2008,
let's get the audio back on.
You supported the border wall, saying, unlike most Democrats, I voted for 700 miles of fence. This is what you said. Then you served as vice president in an administration that deported 3 million people, the most ever in U.S. history. Did you do anything to prevent those deportations? I mean, you've been asked this question before and refused to answer, so let me try once again. Are you prepared to say tonight that
you brought Joe Biden back? It was on a hot spot
about deportations? Why should Latinos trust you?
What Latinos should look at is comparing this president to the president we have is outrageous. Number one, we didn't lock people up in cages. We didn't separate families. We didn't do all of those things. Number one. Number two, by the time this is the president came along with the DACA program. No one had ever done that.
I'm sure you
before.
put people in them.
Mr. President sent a
Technically, you
legislation to the
did.
desk saying he wants to find a pathway for the 11 million
Unless you didn't put
undocumented
people
in the
in, so why
United
would you
States
build
of
them?
America. This is the president who's done a great deal. So I'm proud to have served with him. What I would do as president is several more things because things have changed. I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should
Sanders.
come. I would change the order that the
Hey, over
president
there
just
thinking.
changed, saying women who were being beaten and abused could no longer claim that as a reason for asylum. And by the way, retrospectively, the 25th anniversary of the Violence Against Women Act is up. The Republican Congress has not reauthorized it. Let's put pressure on them to pass.
Hey, don't be trying to change the subject up. Good point.
Yeah, but you didn't answer the question.
Yeah, we're trying to be slick. Look at Biden trying to be slick over here, boy.
Those deportations.
The president did the best thing that was able to be done at the time.
How about you?
I'm the vice president of the United States.
Secretary Castro, would you want to respond to Vice President Biden?
They're going to get him for this one.
Put this in context.
They about to fire. They about to get him up.
The White House and Congress in 2009 and didn't pass immigration reform. And this broke a promise made by President Barack Obama to Latinos. So why should voters trust Democrats now? I mean, now it is even more difficult, as you know, because you need Republican votes in the Senate. So are you willing, for instance, to give up DACA or give up a path to citizenship or even agree to build a wall in order to legalize 10.5 million undocumented immigrants?
Jorge, thank you very much for that question. And look, I agree that Barack Obama was very different from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a dark heart when it comes to immigrants. He built his whole political career so far on scapegoating and fear-mongering and otherizing migrants, and that's very different for Barack Obama. But my problem with Vice President Biden, and Corey pointed this out last time, is every time something good about Barack Obama comes up, he says, oh, I was there, that's me too. And then every time somebody questions part of the administration that we were both part of, he says, well, that was the president. I mean, he wants to take credit for Obama's work, but not have to answer it.
What you gonna do, Biden?
Vice President Biden, you have 45 seconds.
Let me just say.
That's not what I said.
Oh, shoot.
Let me just say that
Here we go.
I was the first candidate in early
what I wanted
April
to see,
put
baby.
forward an immigration plan. You know why? Because I'm not afraid of Donald Trump on this issue. I'm not going to backpedal. I'm not going to pretend like I don't have my own vision for immigration. So we're not going to give up DACA. We're not going to give up protections for anybody. I believe that on January 20th, 2021, we're going to have a Democratic president. We're going to throw out Mitch McConnell.
No problem, man. Thanks for watching.
And have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, and we're going to pass immigration.
Hopefully they don't cut my live stream this time.
Within the first 100 days.
Vice President, 45 seconds.
I did not say I don't stand. I stand with Barack Obama all 8 years, good, bad, and indifferent. That's where I stand. I did not say I did not stand with him.
You did say you're the vice president trying to be slicking and push it to the side.
Parents at the border. And recently in Mississippi, we saw the largest immigration raid in a decade. You want to replace ICE, the agency in charge of rounding up undocumented immigrants. So how would you deal with the millions of immigrants who arrive legally but overstay their visas? And how would you stop hundreds of thousands of Central Americans who want to migrate to the U.S.?
Well, I start with a statement of principles, and that is, in this country, immigration does not make us weaker, immigration makes us stronger. I want to see us expand legal immigration and create a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers, but also for their grandparents and for their cousins, for people who overstayed
Hey,
student
Biden better stay away
visas,
from the fro.
and
Ain't
for
sniffing
people
my
who
fro.
came here to work in the fields. I want to have a system that is a path
I gotta pause the
to
audio real quick.
citizenship that is fair and
Again, I had to pause the audio because last time I was doing this, YouTube put a strike on my video and they cut my live stream short. So I'm gonna have to pause every once in a while just to I don't know what they got going on, what kind of algorithm. So that's why I'm pausing every once in a while. But yeah, so I'll unpause the video in like 10-15 seconds just to try to bypass any strikes YouTube gives me. But yeah, Biden tried to be slick on them, boy. Biden be trying to be slick. Hey, he be sneaking up. Let's unmute this audio. Let's go back to it. See what Warren talking about.
at the border, in no small part because we have withdrawn help from people in Central America who are suffering. We need to restore that help. We need to help establish and reestablish the rule of law so that people don't feel like they have to flee for their lives. We have a crisis that Donald Trump has created and hopes to profit from politically. We have to have the courage to stand up and fight back.
Now that I don't really agree with.
It is true that in the last few years we have seen the most severe anti-immigrant measures, from putting kids in cages to limiting asylum for people fleeing gangs and domestic violence. But it is also true that about 1 million immigrants enter the U.S. legally every year. So are you willing to raise the number of legal immigrants from 1 million to 2 million per year? And should there be a merit system, as President Trump wants?
So, yeah, I'm sorry, did you ask me or?
Mr. Yang.
I already said it, okay. Sorry.
Come on, Warren.
My father grew up on a peanut farm in Asia with no floor, and now his son is running for president. That is the immigration story that we have to be able to share with the American people. If you look at our history, almost half of Fortune 500 companies were founded by their immigrants or children of immigrants. And rates of business formation are much higher in immigrant communities. We have to say to the American people, immigrants are positive for our economic and social dynamism. And I would return the level of legal immigration to the point it was under the Obama-Biden administration. I think we have to compete for talent, and I am the opposite of Donald Trump in many ways. He says build a wall. I'm going to say to immigrants, come to America, because if you come here, your son or daughter can run for president. The water is great, and this is where you want to build a company, build a family, and build a life. This country has been a magnet for human capital for generations. If we lose that, we lose something integral to
I always say this
continued
though,
success,
resources are
and that
not
is where I would
unlimited.
lead as president.
There's only so many resources. Resources are not unlimited.
8 out of 10 Latinos in Texas fear another mass shooting targeting them. This is according to a new Univision poll.
I forgot he was even in the race. I ain't seen him in a minute.
Rapists and killers tried to
On the
ban
stage,
Muslims from entering the country
been kinda
and
quiet.
separated children from their parents. His supporters have chanted, build the wall and send her back. Do you think that people who support President Trump and his immigration policies are racist?
Anyone who supports this is supporting racism. Este es racismo y es sencillo. The only people, though, who actually buy into this president's hateful rhetoric around immigrants are people who don't know any. We have an opportunity to build an American majority around immigration reform.
I don't think that's true. I've seen people who immigrated here who actually like Trump.
Rallied around an
So
individual, a beloved local individual who was deported when he went into
That's one
ICE
thing
to
I
try
think
to
a lot
get
of
his
people on
paperwork
at
sorted
least these
out, because they
candidates,
never thought it would happen to him. In some
they try
of the most
too hard
conservative rural
to
areas
impress,
of Iowa, I
or
have
to
seen
try to
communities that embraced immigration grow.
group
And it's
people
why
together in
part of
one,
my plan for revitalizing
category
the
based off
economies
of
of rural America
race or
includes community
political
renewal
view.
visas that would allow cities
this for
and
these
towns and
candidates,
counties
not
that are
everybody,
hurting not only
obviously.
for jobs but for population to embrace immigration as we have in my city. You know, the only reason that South Bend is growing right now, after years of shrinking, is immigration. It's one of the reasons we acted, not waiting for Washington, to create city-issued municipal IDs so that people, regardless of immigration status, in our city had the opportunity to have the benefits of identification. We have an opportunity to actually get something done, but we cannot allow this to continue to be the same debate with the same arguments and the same clever lines, often among the same people, since the last real reform happened in the 1980s. We have to actually engage the American majority around the opportunities for not just growth in small communities, but our values of welcome,
You know what Trump's
values
gonna
of
do?
faith that all argue
Trump's
for
gonna-
us to manage
Trump's gonna
this
hook up the
humanely
DACA.
and in a way that marries our values with our laws.
Trump, let me pause it. I gotta pause it anyways. It's coming up on my pause limit.
In an interview
Hold on, let me see what he say.
8 months ago, you were asked what to do with the so-called overstayers, people who come with a visa and then stay. And you said, I don't know. Do you have an answer now?
I do, and if you read the rest of that article in the Washington Post, I talked about harmonizing our entry-exit system with Mexico in the same way that we...
I gotta pause it again. YouTube cut my last live stream because when I was doing a debate for copyright, whatever. But anyways, you know what Donald Trump's gonna do? Donald Trump's gonna do something for DACA before the next election or something, right? He's gonna do a few things that they're I don't know, to try to be like, hey, it's already done. What you gonna do now? Anyways, yeah, YouTube cut my live stream short, so I'm pausing the audio every once in a while to try to maybe, I don't know, defeat the algorithm that they have. Let's give it about 10 more seconds before I unmute it. Alright, that's too long. Let's go right now. Forget it. Unmute.
That there is accountability and justice for the 7 lives lost under our care and our custody, but also face the fact that Democrats and Republicans alike voted to build a wall that has produced thousands of deaths of people trying to cross to join family or to work a job, that we have been part of deporting people, hundreds of thousands.
I don't think the wall caused
Obama
deaths.
Administration alone, who posed no threat to this country, breaking up their families. Democrats have to get off the back foot. We have to lead on this issue because we know it is right. Legalize America.
Really,
begin with those more than 1 million dreamers. Make them U.S. citizens right now in their true home country. And extend that to their parents, their sisters, and their brothers. And ensure that we have a legal, safe, orderly system to come to this country.
That's a lot of. That's a lot. Whoa.
Jorge, thank you. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, national security, foreign policy.
Let me go and pause it right there. Because I think I got a copyright strike because it was a commercial or something like that, maybe that was playing music or something. I'm not sure, but whatever it is, I'm pausing the audio every once in a while, and when they go to commercial break, I'm definitely pausing for sure, because I don't need that music being copyright strike. Whatever it was, I got copyright strike. I got a copyright strike last time, and they cut my live stream short, and they said I couldn't stream for 90 days. But I guess they gave me some slack, and it was 30 days, whatever. Anyways, so let's see what Holden Caulfield says. They only want immigration to exploit cheap labor so they can line those pockets of Wall Street fat cats. That's both parties. This is possibly true, right? I mean, if you think about it, right? Like, they are saying some ridiculous things, like what he just said. Somebody comes here, if they've been here for a while, I'm guessing he was talking about people who came here legally, but they overstayed their stays or something like that, or anchor babies, whatnot. He's saying, well, you should allow, they should instantly become legal, then also their kids, then their mom, their dads, their cousins, their sisters, their brothers. I'm like, whoa, that, you can't be doing that, man. That's just unlimited right there. At what point? And the question one of the what's his name had a little loud. All right, let me turn that down then. Let me turn that down some. How's that sound? Is that good? Is it still loud? All right, cool. Guess that's better. All right, but yeah, so that's what I think about the the immigration. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know. The immigration thing is the illegal immigration thing is a little crazy. I mean, there is a lot of you can't like I heard it been said before. What is the limit? How much should America allow in each year then? Like you just heard the question say, should it go from 1 million to 2 million? Would you allow the limit to be 2 million? And then once that's hit, then what do you go to 3 million? At what point is the limit, right? And you just can't let everybody in, right? So there has to be a limit, because I always say this: resources are not unlimited. Just like at the border, right? No matter what anybody wants to say, good or bad, when you have an influx of people and you're not given the finance needed to adjust, accommodate for the people, whatever resources that you did have for what you were expecting, those resources are going to run out. They're not going to last forever. Hence is why they were asking for more money. When you don't get the money, you have to make do with what you have, which means you're running out of resources. So no matter what, I mean, if you go to work, right, and you have a specific task to do, and your task every day only requires, let's just say, 5 pencil, or only requires 5 loaves of bread, and then one day you get like 300 people coming into your store when you only usually get 50 people, you're going to need more bread, right? If you don't get the money to buy more bread, you're not going to have any bread to service the rest of the 300 people. That's just it. Resources are not unlimited. But yeah, so anyways, that's that. But you can debate. So Windows 7 Forever, 2018. Good name, huh? You can debate about the corrupted and dishonest political system all you want, since the Democrats and the Republicans never care about the people, and they never will keep supporting them. It's just stupid. Yeah. I mean, I guess you just got to find the good medium, right? Find that one person that's just right. And in most cases, the one that's right or that seems perfect probably don't ever have a chance of winning or have even being close to winning, just because nobody ever votes for that person that, whatever the case may be. Oh, what doesn't need more bread? No, I don't know. I was just thinking like let's say you own a sandwich shop and you only have like your daily customers, like your average customers daily is only like 50 customers daily. So you only have 10 loaves of bread, right? That you make or that you have. And then all of a sudden for like 2-3 weeks straight, you get like 500 people every day. If you don't get more resources to buy more bread, you're going to run out of bread. And I was using that as an example as the border. If at the border we're getting like this as an example, these are nowhere near the right numbers. You say you're getting like 1,000 people every month at the border. You can accommodate those for what you have based off the resources that you have. But then if out of nowhere you get from 1,000 to like 20,000 people, and you're asking for more money, but you don't get any more money to accommodate for those resources or for those extra personnel, you're going to run out of resources. That's all I'm saying. Resources are not unlimited. No matter what case it is, no matter what scenario it is, no matter what, resources are not unlimited. That's all I'm saying. But that's my aspect on the border thing, right? Just common sense. That's all I'm trying to use. Like, no matter what, no matter how moral it is, no matter how right it is, wrong it is, bad, good, evil, crazy, if you run out of resources and you're not accommodated to adjust for the extra whatever it is, you're not going to be able to be more as efficient as you was before. You're not going to be as efficient. You're going to run out of resources. People are going to get more tired. Hours, everything. It's a full thing. Yep. Illegal immigration is going to happen, and it's back, so we're going to unmute it real quick. I'm just going to read this last comment, or not last, but illegal immigration is going to happen regardless. Nothing anyone can do about it. Even a wall won't work. The real issue is fair taxation among all residents of the country, and currently it's unfair. That illegal immigration is going to happen regardless, but if we can find a way to curb it, that would help. Well, I don't say help, but there's a way to curb. Anything could be curbed, right? Almost anything could be curbed. And the issue is taxation, yeah. All right, let's get back to this.
So the imbalances are
Let's
real.
see what Yang Gang
we have
up
to let
to.
the Chinese know that we recognize that President Trump has pursued an arbitrary and haphazard trade policy that has had victims on both sides. So no to repealing the tariffs immediately, but yes to making sure we come to a deal that addresses the concerns of American companies and American producers.
Mayor Pete, let me take that question.
I'm not sure what the question was.
Let me take that question to you, because if you've seen President Trump's tweets, he says what's going to happen here is the Chinese are just going to wait him out so they can get a Democrat who they can take advantage of. How do you think about China? We've seen President Trump call President Xi both an enemy and a friend.
Well, the president clearly has no strategy. You know, when I first got into this race, I remember President Trump scoffed and said he'd like to see me making a deal with Xi Jinping. I'd like to see him making a deal with Xi Jinping. Is it just me, or was that supposed to happen in like April? It's one more example of a commitment not made. When that happens on the international stage, people take note. Not just our competitors, our adversaries, but also our allies take note of the inability of the United States to keep its word or follow through on its plans. And when that happens, there are serious consequences. We saw it at the G7, the leaders of some of the greatest powers and economies of the world sitting to talk about one of the greatest challenges in the world, climate change, and there was literally an empty chair where American leadership could have been. The problem is, this is a moment when American leadership is needed more than ever, whether it's in Hong Kong, where those protesters for democracy need to know that they have a friend in the United States, or anywhere around the world where increasingly we see dictators throwing their weight around. The world needs America, but it can't be just any America.
Would you
It has to
repeal
be-
the tariffs?
I would have a strategy that would include the tariffs as leverage, but it's not about the tariffs. Look, what's going on right now is a president who has reduced the entire China challenge into a question of tariffs, when what we know is that the tariffs are coming down on us more than anybody else, and there's a lack of a bigger strategy.
Senator Klobuchar, you've actually supported the tariffs on steel.
What we've got right now, though, George, it's not a focused tariff on steel. What he has done here, he has assessed these tariffs on our allies. He has put us in the middle of this trade war, and he is treating our farmers and our workers like poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. And if we are not careful, he is going to bankrupt this country. One forecast recently says that it has already cost us 300,000
Yeah, that's true. They both sit there and lie.
All right?
All these candidates
there
lying
is
right now.
soybeans that are mounting up in bins all over the Midwest, in my state of Minnesota, and in Iowa.
But they do
So
say
what
some
I
good
think
stuff
we
here
need
and
to
there,
do
so
is
I
to
give
go
them that. I
back to
give
the
them credit
negotiating
when they
table.
got.
That's what I would do. I wouldn't have put all these tariffs in place, and I wouldn't have had a trade policy where on August 1st he announces he's going to have tariffs on $300 billion of goods. On August 13th, he cuts it in half. A week later, he says he's going to reduce taxes. The day after that, he says he's going to do it. The leaders of the world are watching this, and it undermines our strength as a nation. And yes, we want fair trade, but we must work with the rest of the world. And he has made a mockery of focused trade policy, which I think means enforcement.
Well, to be fair,
like we've done
been
in
mocked
northern
for a
Minnesota,
long time. Ain't
passing
nobody-
bills, getting President Obama to do more on that, so that our workers can benefit. So we are exporting goods and making
I don't think it's a
sure
big issue that
that is a competitive
much you wanna
policy
impose
where our
tariffs,
goal
not tariff,
is
half
that
the
we are
tariff.
making things, inventing things,
Postpone the
and
tariffs.
exporting to the world. He is defeating that
I don't
goal.
think that's
Secretary
a big
Castro,
deal
you
at
actually in
all.
one of the previous
Think
debates
they're blowing that way
identified
out of
China as
proportion.
the most serious national security
But yeah, like I was
threat
saying, though,
to our country. I want to pick up on what Senator Klobuchar was saying, though. She said she'd go back to the negotiating table. The question is, what do you do for leverage? Where do you get it?
Well, look, I
do be saying
agree
some
with
stuff
those
that's
who
good
have said that
sometimes.
this erratic, haphazard trade
when
war
they say that,
is hurting
I'll
American
acknowledge
families.
it. When they say
As
something
Senator
crazy,
Klobuchar
I'll
said,
acknowledge it as
300,000
well.
American jobs. It's estimated that it's cost $600 to the average American family. Just a couple of days ago, 60% of Americans said that they believe that we're in for a recession next year. So when I become president, I
really
would
don't care about what
immediately
people
begin
believe
to
in.
negotiate with China
Most-
to ratchet
I mean,
down that
that's-
trade war. We have leverage
what
there.
people believe in is
I
what they're
also
being
believe,
told
though, that
by
we need to return
somebody either trying to
to a
fearmonger
leader when
or-
it comes to things like human rights.
Whether it's true or not,
We have
that's what people believe in. A lot of people don't do
millions of
research on their
Uyghurs,
own.
for instance, in China, that right now are being imprisoned and mistreated. And
when
in North Korea, this president is elevating a dictator. We need to stop that. We need to return to ensuring that America leads again on human rights. When it comes to this trade war,
Well, I got to pause real quick. Again, I'm going to keep saying it. YouTube cut my live stream short. Last time I was doing a live stream, they cut my live stream short. Copyright strike. So I'll pause it every once in a while to make sure I can bypass the algorithm or whatever the case may be. But yeah, like I was saying, I don't like when they say people believe this is going to happen in the future, so therefore we must counter. I'm like, no. Don't be making policies based on what people believe or think is going to happen, because most people, when they believe or thinking, when they take these polls, when people ask them something, they think or believe this may happen. It's mainly because they're just regurgitating what they've heard somebody say without any basis, right, or whatever the case may be. So I don't really, when they say that, I don't ignore it. I take it back in my head, go do some quick research or look it up, and say, okay, it was nothing. It was. So when they say that stuff, to me, it's just, I think they use that for leverage to try to make their argument more, have some base to it, whatever. But your boy talking about corner, see what I threw that.
Table. I want to negotiate it with environmentalists at the table. I want to negotiate with human rights activists at the table. And you asked the question about leverage. If I can just respond to that one.
Hey, let me take my leverage away.
Are you kidding? Everybody wants access to the American market. That means that we have the capacity to say right here in America, you want to come sell goods to American consumers, then you've got to raise your standards. You've got to raise your labor standards, and you've got to raise your environmental standards, so our companies can compete on a level
Elizabeth Warren
playing
get
field.
two thumbs up so far. She ain't getting none from me last time.
American workers, and not to undermine American farms,
Write that down.
and not to undermine small
Okay,
businesses
Elizabeth Warren,
in this
take
country.
some W's today.
We can use trade to help build a stronger economy.
Senator Harris, how would your trade policy differ from President Obama's?
Well, first of all, I have no criticism of that more than just looking at where we are now, which is that we've got a guy in the White House who has been erratic on trade policy. He conducts trade policy by tweet, frankly, born out of his fragile ego. It has resulted in farmers in Iowa with soybeans rotting in bins.
Man, you don't care about no dang farmers. You getting an L.
At this issue, my trade policy
See how
under
they
the
trying to be
Harris
slick.
administration is always going to be about
See,
saying
Elizabeth
we
Warren
need
got
to
the W. You
export
gotta get this
American
L. You
products,
better.
not American jobs. And to do that, we have
not
to
telling you
have
about the money
a
the
meaningful
farmers are
trade
getting,
policy.
though.
I am not a protectionist Democrat. Look, we need to sell our stuff. And that means we need to sell it to people overseas. That means we need trade policies that allow that to happen. You asked earlier about China. It's a complicated relationship. We have to hold China accountable. They steal our products, including our
That ain't
intellectual
no relationship.
property.
That's
they
more
dump
of a
substandard products into
white
our
beat- a
economy.
white beater,
They
you
need to be
know,
held accountable. We also need to partner with China on climate and the crisis that presents. We need to partner with China on the issue of North Korea. I am on, and I think the only person on this stage, the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Homeland Security Committee. We need a partner on the issue of North Korea. But the bottom line is this: Donald Trump, in office on trade policy, you know, he reminds me of that guy in The Wizard of Oz. You know, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
I don't really know where she's going with that.
Okay.
It's a little funny, I guess. Got late laughs.
I'm not even going to take the bait, Senator Harris.
She was waiting for somebody to laugh, so she got a chuckle out of it. I guess we'll laugh too, right? There you go.
There is a reason why
There's gonna be some news about that.
45 years.
Dang, Bernie.
The average
been quiet.
American today, despite an explosion of technology and worker productivity, is not making a penny more than he or she made 45 years ago. And one of the reasons is that for decades we have had disastrous trade policies. And I got to say to my good friend Joe Biden, Joe
Boris.
and I strongly disagree.
They all got them crazy
on trade.
hairdos, man.
I helped lead the opposition to NAFTA and PNTR, which cost this country over 4 million good-paying jobs. And what happened is people who had those jobs ended up getting other jobs, making 50% of what they made in manufacturing. So Trump obviously hasn't a clue. Trump thinks that trade policy is a tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning. What we have got to do is develop a trade policy.
Yeah, I know Harris. She ain't got no room to talk. Harris trying to be slick. Harris gonna be taking mails all day. She literally got herself in the box. That's why every time she says something, she try to pull the
Trump's policy.
I care about the farmers and everything else, like she tried to do right there. You don't care about no farmers, Harris. Try to be slick.
And goes abroad and then thinks they're going to get online to get a lucrative federal contract under Bernie Sanders. They got another guess coming.
Vice President Biden, he invoked your name.
I don't know what the hell you talking about.
Well, look,
I mean, I know,
we're
but
either going to make the policy
at
or
that
China's
point,
going to
Bernie
make
Sanders is just
the rules of the road. We make up 25% of the world economy. We need another 25% to join us. And I think Senator Warren is correct. At the table has to be labor, and at the table have to be environmentalists. The fact of the matter is, China, the problem isn't the trade deficit. The problem is they're stealing our intellectual property. The problem is they're violating the WTO.
So what you gonna do, Biden?
Dumping steel.
Yeah, 8 years, man.
That's
Get that
a
stuff
different
straight.
issue than whether or not they're dumping
Biden's problem is
agricultural
they ain't do
products
nothing the
on
last
us.
administration.
In addition to that, we're
Harris'
in a position
problem is
where if
she was,
we don't
like you
set
say,
the rules,
Like Holden
We, in
Caulfield
fact, are
said,
going to find ourselves
she
with
was,
China setting
using the
the
penal
rules.
system for cheap
And that's
labor.
why you need to organize the world to take on China to stop the corrupt practices that are underway.
Imagine if
Senator
Kamala
Booker,
Harris
close
was
out
white.
this round.
Sure. There's one point we're really missing
Man, she
on
would be
the stage
out the
right now,
race the
which
moment she
is
stepped in it.
the fact that Donald Trump's America
She would
First
literally
policy
be a
is
slave
actually
owner.
an America isolated, an America
She would be considered a
alone
slave owner
policy.
pretty much.
From trade to battling China
Booker always
to
smelled like he lying.
global crisis of climate change, the challenges in the Middle East, he is pulling
He
us
always look like he
away
about to
from
lie.
our allies, out of the Iran deal, out of the Paris Climate Accords. And on trade, he's deciding to take on China while at the same time taking on tariff battles with all of our allies. You literally have him using a national security waiver to put tariffs on Canada. Now look, I'm the only person on the stage that finds Trudeau's hair very menacing, but they are not a national
got crazy hair
security
too? Let me
threat.
see.
We cannot
put him in
go
the same
up
category.
against China alone. This is a president that has a better relationship with dictators like Duterte
Okay, I
and
guess he does got
Putin
crazy hair.
than he does with Merkel and Macron. We
Ain't
are the
that crazy,
strongest
though.
nation on the planet Earth, and our strength is multiplied and magnified when we stand with our allies in common cause and common purpose. That's how we beat China. That's how we beat climate change on the planet Earth, and that's how American values are the ones that lead on issues of trade and workers' rights.
David.
George, thank you. I want to turn now to our troops overseas and to America's longest war in Afghanistan. U.S. talks with the Taliban are dead, according to the president. Secret talks at Camp David have been canceled before they could happen. Many of you have weighed in on that already. So I want to move past that tonight to what all of you have promised on the campaign trail. Many of you on this stage have said you'd bring the troops home in your first term. Others have said in your first year. Senator Warren, we all know the presidency is much different from the campaign trail. President Obama wanted to bring the troops home. President Trump promised to bring the troops home. And you have said of Afghanistan, let's help them reach a peace settlement. It is time to bring our troops home, in your words, starting right now. Would you keep that promise to bring the troops home starting right now with no deal with the Taliban?
Yes. And I'll tell you why. What we're doing right now in Afghanistan is not helping the safety and security of the United States. It is not helping the safety
Weren't they
and
complaining like
security
5,
of
6
the
months
world.
ago when he
It is
was
not
talking about pulling
helping the
everybody
safety
out,
and security
saying
of
that he shouldn't?
Afghanistan. We
Somebody let me
need
know.
to bring our troops home. And then we need to make a big shift. We cannot ask our military to keep solving problems that cannot be solved militarily. We're not going to bomb our way to a solution in Afghanistan. We need to treat the problem of terrorism as a worldwide problem. And that means we need to be working with all of our allies, our European allies.
That's what Trump's trying to do. He's trying to say, everybody, you need to put your fair work in the game.
Africa and in South America.
So I agree with her.
We need
Warren, you getting 3 W's, Warren? Gosh dang.
to root out
She keep getting
terrorism.
W's.
It means using all of our tools. It means economic investment. It means expanding our diplomatic efforts instead of hollowing out the State Department and deliberately making it so we have no
Elizabeth Warren
eyes
getting
and
all the
ears in
W's,
many
man.
of these countries.
I gotta write this
We
down too.
need
She ain't
a
get no
foreign
W's last time. She got
that
0
is about
W's from
our
me.
security and about
This time
leading
she getting
on
some
our
W's,
values.
man.
Senator
What's going on,
Warren, quick
Elizabeth?
follow on that, because top U.S. leaders, military leaders on the ground in Afghanistan told me you can't do it without a deal with the Taliban. You just said you would. You would bring them home. What if they told you that? Would you listen to their advice?
I was in Afghanistan with John McCain 2 years ago.
What
this
that got to
past
do with
summer.
anything?
I think it may have been Senator McCain's last trip before he was sick. And I talked to people. We did. We talked to military leaders, American and local leaders. We talked to people on the ground and asked the question, the same one I ask on the Senate Armed Services Committee, every time one of the generals comes through. Show me what winning looks like. Tell me what it looks like. And what you hear is a lot of because no one can describe it. And the reason no one can describe it is because the problems in Afghanistan are not problems that can be solved by a military. I have 3 older brothers who all served in the military. I understand firsthand the kind of commitment they have made. They will do anything we ask them to do. but we cannot ask them to solve problems that they alone cannot solve. We need to work with the rest of the world. We need to use our economic tools. We need to use our diplomatic tools. We need to build with our allies, and we need to make the whole world safer, not
you cool
keep
with shut up, my guy.
bombing in Afghanistan.
I can't shut up, dude. If I shut up, I'm gonna get that copyright strike, and YouTube gonna shut me up for you.
Because you're the only veteran on
So
the
how about
stage
you?
who served in Afghanistan.
Yeah, man.
We heard in recent days from General Joseph Dunford, the chair of the Joint Chiefs
Hey,
of Staff.
he want me to
who
get my
said in
copyright
recent
strike
days, I'm
again,
not going to
so
use
YouTube
the
could
word
cut me short
withdrawal
again.
right now.
Hey, if I shut
It's
up,
our
they gonna be
judgment
like,
the
hold up.
Afghans need support
All
to
we
deal
hear
with the
is,
level of violence.
oh, ABC gonna,
If he's not
ABC
even
is
using
gonna
the word
report
withdrawal,
me.
would you put
I'm
your
gonna get another
promise to
copyright
bring
strike.
troops home in the
I ain't
first
finna
year
have that.
on hold
I already
to
got
follow
one.
the
A
advice?
90-day strike.
You know, I
Lucky they
served
gave me
under
some leeway.
General
You only did for like 30 days.
Way under General Dunford in
Yeah,
Afghanistan.
last stream I did, YouTube cut me short on the last debate.
Today,
because I got a copyright strike.
September 12th, 2019,
so I got to do it the right way.
means that today you could be 18 years old enough to serve, and have not been alive on 9/11. We have got to put an end to endless war. And the way we do it is see to it that that country will never again be used for an attack against our homeland, and that does not require an open-ended commitment.
I ain't making no money off of this. I ain't monetizing this.
Because if there's one thing we've learned
I ain't doing this for nobody. Not yet, anyways.
From Afghanistan,
no
is
money
that
from this.
the best way not to be caught up in endless war is to avoid starting one in the first place. And so, when I am
You
president,
thought I was monetizing this.
an authorization for the
monetize
use
well.
of military force will have a built-in 3-year sunset.
Just doing this for
Congress
fun.
will be required to vote, and a president will be required
At
to
the
go
moment
to
I am
Congress
anyways.
to seek
Maybe in
an
the future I'll start
authorization.
monetizing
Because
stuff, but I ain't
if
care
our
about it
troops
right now.
can summon the courage to go overseas, the least our members of Congress should be able to do is summon the courage to take a vote on whether they ought to be there. By the way, we also have a president right now who seems to treat troops as props, or worse, tools for his own enrichment. We saw what's going on with flights apparently being routed through Scotland just so people can stay at his hotels. I'll tell you, as a military officer, the very first thing that goes through your mind, the first time you ever make eye contact with somebody that you are responsible for in uniform, is do not let these men and women down. This president is doing exactly that. I will not.
Mayor Buttigieg, thank you. I want to turn to Vice President
I'm not sure how he's doing that,
because the concerns about any
better.
possible vacuum being created in Afghanistan if you pull the U.S. troops out has been heightened by what we've seen in recent days on the ground in Iraq. When you were Vice President, President Obama turned to you to bring the troops home from Iraq. You have said on the campaign trail, quote, "I made sure the president turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq." There was a major drawdown of U.S. troops, and then ISIS seized, by some estimates, 40% of the territory
ISIS came
in
in
Iraq.
and just fucking
You then had to
woo,
send thousands of troops
just
back
swooped
in.
in.
Was it wrong to pull out of Iraq that quickly, and did the move actually help ISIS take hold?
No, it wasn't wrong to pull up. But I want to answer an Afghanistan question. I've been in and out of Afghanistan, not with a gun, and I admire my friend for his service. But I've been out of Afghanistan, I think, more than anybody on this, and it's an open secret. You reported a long time ago, George, that I was opposed to the surge in Afghanistan. The whole purpose of going to Afghanistan was to not have a counterinsurgency, meaning that we're going to put that country together.
Hey,
it can.
I think Trump might have it 2020. These candidates,
Let me say it again.
They too wishy-washy, man. They're gonna get eaten alive.
Different countries. Pakistan owns the three counties, the 3 provinces, and the East. They're not any part of it. The economies run it. I will go on and on, but here's the point. The point is that it's a counter-terrorism strategy. We can prevent the United States from being the victim of terror coming out of Afghanistan by providing for bases and insist that Pakistanis provide.
I'll go over the comments when I mute it next time.
To airlift from and to move against what we know. We don't need those troops there. I would bring them home. And Joe Dunford's a fine guy, but this has been an internal argument we've had for 8 years. With regard to Iraq, the fact of the matter is that, I should have never voted to give Bush the authority to go in and do what he said he was going to do. The AUMF was designed, he said, to go in and get the Security Council to vote 15-0 to allow inspectors to go in to determine whether or not anything was being done with chemical weapons or nuclear weapons. And when that happened, he went ahead and went anyway without any of that proof. I said something that was not meant the way I said it. I said from that point on, what I was argued against in the beginning, once he started to put the troops in was that, in fact, we were doing it the wrong way. There was no plan. We should not be engaged. We didn't have the people with us. We didn't have our allies with us, etc. And it was later.
He tried hard to think of some.
Office, the president turned to me and said, "Joe," when they said we had a plan to get out, he turned to the whole security and said, "Joe will organize this.
Joe will organize this."
My son spent a year in Iraq.
My son spent a year in Iraq.
Understand. It made,
I understand.
We were right to get the combat troops out.
Got to get the combat troops out. I understand this.
Which we predicted was that you would not have a circumstance where the Shia and the Kurds would work together to keep ISIS from coming.
Yeah, that's a dang question.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. I want to turn to Senator Sanders on this because the concern over Afghanistan is very similar to what we saw in Iraq when the troops came out. ISIS
God dang, Bernie. Clean yourself up, man.
People out there who are worried that if we pull out U.S. troops too quickly from Afghanistan, it will create safe haven all over again, like the plotters of 9/11.
David, let me answer that, but let me just comment on something that the Vice President said. You talked about the big mistake in Iraq and the surge. The truth is, the big mistake, the huge mistake.
Sanders? I said Biden.
One of the big differences between you and me, I never believed what Cheney and Bush said about Iraq. I voted against the war in Iraq and helped lead the opposition.
We're going to do a quick pause real quick.
It's sad to say. I mean, I kind of,
Sanders ain't going too crazy.
That there would be massive destabilization in that area if we went into that war.
Hold on.
As the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I want to pick up on what Pete said. We cannot express our gratitude to all of the men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend us, who have responded to the call of duty. But I think also I am the only person up here to have voted against all
I got to mute it real quick.
Trump's military.
Again, I mute it every once in a while because last time I was doing a debate, I got a copyright strike and they cut my live stream short. But anyways, let's go through some of these comments real quick, and then we'll get back to the audio. So we got multinational conglomerates are the real terrorists. Harris used to. Oh, we already went over those actually. Booker won't discuss the killing fields of Chicago. Warren be sounding like Clinton in 2016. The killing fields in Chicago. I'm about to check. Okay, yeah, of course Booker's not going to discuss that. You know, dang well he's not going to discuss that. That would just, that's too much for them. They're not going to do that. Warren be sounding like Clinton in 2016. Yeah, she do. She be trying to be slick just like Biden. You cool, Bush? We went over that. We already discussed that. Neither side of lies with this number 7. Yeah, Biden think he's slick. Biden is trash. It's between Bernie, Warren, and Biden. But Biden ain't the one. Why aren't there any American flags on the stage? That's a good question. I don't know. You know how to. Hey, let's see what Yang Gang is talking about. But I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I have no answer to that one. I mean, I'm pretty sure we could probably figure out why, but I don't know.
The unclear benefits lost thousands of lives, and thank you, Pete, for your service. And the goal has to be to rebuild the relationships that have made America strong for decades. I would lead our armed forces with restraint and judgment. What the American people want is simply a president who has the right values and point of view, and they can trust to make the right decisions when it comes to putting our young men and women into harm's way. And that's what I would do as president.
Mr. Yang, thank you. Jorge?
My video is going to cut out for a couple seconds.
Vamos a hablar de América Latina. You haven't been asked about Latin America in the previous debate, so let's begin. Senator Sanders, one country where many immigrants are arriving from is Venezuela. A recent UN fact-finding mission found that thousands have been disappeared, tortured, and killed by government forces in Venezuela. You admit that Venezuela does not have free elections, but still you refuse to call Nicolás Maduro un dictador, a dictator. Can you explain why, and what are the main differences between your kind of socialism and the one being imposed in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua?
Well, first of all, let me be very clear. Anybody who does what Maduro does is a vicious tyrant. What we need now is international and regional cooperation for free elections in Venezuela, so that the people of that country can make.
Oh, you know what?
It can create their own future. In terms of democratic socialism, to equate what goes on in Venezuela with what I believe is extremely unfair. I'll tell you what I believe in terms of democratic socialism. I agree with what goes on in Canada and in Scandinavia, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right. I believe that the United States should not be the only major country on earth not to provide paid family and medical leave. I believe that every worker in this country deserves a living wage and that we expand the trade union movement. I happen to believe also that what, to me, democratic socialism means is we deal with an issue we do not discuss enough, Jorge, not in the media and not in Congress. You got 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of this country. You got a handful of billionaires controlling what goes on in Wall Street, the insurance companies, and in the media. Maybe, just maybe, what we should be doing is creating an economy that works for all of us, not 1%.
Sanders a W right here, but then I'm like, wait up, Sanders. You be going against everything you be preaching. Take this L, man.
Sure, thank you, Jorge. I'll call Maduro a dictator because he is a dictator.
See, here we go.
And what we need to do is to, along with our allies, make sure that the Venezuelan people get the assistance that they need, that we continue to pressure Venezuela so that they'll have free and fair elections, and also here in the United States, offer temporary protected status, TPS, to Venezuelans. That is something that the Trump administration has failed to do. For all of his big talk about supporting the Venezuelan American community, he has failed. I will not. I also believe that we need to do things like a 21st century Marshall Plan for Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala so that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of having to make the dangerous journey to the United States. And under my administration, we're going to put renewed focus on Latin America. It makes sense. They're our neighbors, and we have a lot of things in common.
You know what?
It also makes sense that because we have a country like China that is going around the world to places like Africa and Latin America, making their own relationships, strengthening those. The United States needs to strengthen its partnerships in Latin America immediately.
Thank you,
and I will.
Senator Booker, let me ask you about Brazil.
We'll give him a W on that one.
After the recent fires in the Amazon, some experts suggested that eating less meat is one way to help the environment. You are a vegan since 2014. That's obviously a personal choice. But President Trump and Brazil's President Bolsonaro are concerned that climate change regulations could affect economic growth. So should more Americans, including those here in Texas and in Iowa, follow your diet?
First of all, I want to say no. Actually, I want to translate that into Spanish. No.
All right, we give a W for Booker being funny.
Look, let's just be clear.
Get a W there.
The factory farming going on that's assaulting this corporate consolidation, the agriculture industry. One of the reasons why I have a bill to put a moratorium on this kind of corporate consolidation is because this factory farming is destroying and hurting our environment, and you see independent family farmers being pushed out of business because of the kind of incentives we are giving that don't line up with our values. That's what I'm calling for. But I want to switch because we don't have crowded debate stage. We were talking about Afghanistan and Iraq. It annoys me that we had a conversation about our troops overseas and we didn't say one word about veterans in our country. We have a shameful reality in America that we send people off to war and they often come home with invisible wounds, hurts, and harms. They're disproportionately homeless. You hear stories about women waiting for months for gynecological care through the VA. It is very important that as we as a country understand that we are not going to solve every problem with this outrageous increased militarism, that we also make sure that we stand up for the people that stood for us. We end our national anthem with Home of the Brave. It's about time we make this a better home for our bravest.
Congressman O'Rourke, Hurricane Harvey hit this town 2 years ago, and not only is the Amazon burning, Greenland is melting at a record pace. The last 5 years have been the hottest ever recorded, and we have a viewer's question about this. What meaningful action will you take to reverse the effect of climate change, and can we count on you to follow through if your donors are against it?
Yes, we will follow through regardless of the political consequences or who it offends, because this is the very future of our planet and our ability for our children and grandchildren to be able to survive on it. We will make sure that we get to net zero greenhouse gas emissions no later than the year 2050, that we are halfway there by 2030, that we mobilize $5 trillion over the next 10 years to do that, that we invest here in Houston, Texas, with pre-disaster mitigation grants to protect those communities that are vulnerable to flooding, given the fact that this town has seen 3 500-year floods in just 5 years. You'd like to think you're good for 1,500 years, but you're not. They're coming faster and larger and more devastating than ever. We're also going to make sure that we free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels and embrace renewable wind and solar energy technology, as well as the high-paying, high-skill, high-wage jobs that come along with that. And then we're going to pay farmers for the environmental services that they want to provide, planting cover crops, keeping more land under conservation, using no-till farming. Regenerative agriculture can pull carbon out of the air and can drive it and sequester it into the soil. That's the way that we're going to meet this challenge, and we're going to bring everyone into the solution.
Many of you want to comment. Let's try to see if we can go very fast. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. This is the existential crisis of our time. It's, you know, that movie, The Day After Tomorrow? It's today. We have seen a warming in our world like never before. We're seeing flooding in the Midwest, flooding in Houston, fires in the West. And I think having someone leading the ticket from the Midwest will allow us to talk about this in a different way and get it done. On day one, I will get us back into the International Climate Change Agreement. On day two, I will bring back the clean power rules that President Obama had worked on. On day three, I will bring back the gas mileage standards. You can do all that without Congress, which is good. On day 4, 5, and 6,
why don't you do it in your local district or
with Congress and mayors and business people all over the country, introduce sweeping legislation to get at that 2050 goal. And on day 7, you're supposed to rest, but I won't.
Senator Warren.
This is what we need to do if we're going to get at climate change. We have to take this on as a crisis that's happening right now.
Senator Warren, should American foreign policy be based around the principle of climate change?
Yes. We need to work on every front on climate change. It is the threat to every living thing on this planet, and we are running out of time. Every time the scientists go back, they say we have less and less time than we thought we had. But
of course, they want to make it more dramatic.
All the tools. One of the tools we need to use are our regulatory tools. I have proposed, following Governor Inslee, that we, by 2028, cut all carbon emissions from new buildings. By 2030, carbon emissions from cars.
That's over 10 years. Hold up. Oh, no, it's not.
All carbon emissions from the manufacture of electricity. That alone, those three will cut our emissions here in the United States by 70%. We can do this. We also need to help around the world to clean, but
that's not going to happen,
understand this one more time.
If you know how long it takes,
why doesn't it happen?
Because of all the policies and mandates
Washington is
that
paying
a lot of cities have
to money
just to get
than
basic
it is
roads
to our
fixed.
Future. We can't
that ain't
going to
happen in no 10 years.
We have to attack the corruption head on so that we can save our planet.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds.
Elizabeth Warren, you're getting your first L of the day.
Issue, it really is through the lens of my baby nieces who are 1.5 and 3 years old. When I look at what is going to be the world if we do nothing when they turn 20, I am really scared. And
no, you're not.
When I've been in the United States Senate for now the last 2.5 years, and I look at our counterparts, the Republicans in the United States Senate, they must be looking at their children, and then when they look at the mirror, I don't know what they see, but it's a lack of courage.
I don't know who's going to win what.
And this is an issue that, yes, it represents an existential threat. It is also something we can do something about. This is a problem that was created by human behaviors.
You better not
and
eat
we
beans
can
and
change
cornbread
our
ever
behaviors
again.
in a way that saves our
I could do without cornbread, but
I've seen it happen.
Hey, give me
in
some
California,
beans now.
I took on, as the Attorney General of California, I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States.
Bernie might win Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada,
I took on the big oil companies, and we saw progress.
Possibly. I'm not
If
sure
any
who's
of you
going
have
what.
been to Los
He's all
Angeles
in the
20
air, I
years
don't
ago,
know.
you'll remember that sky was brown. You go there now, the sky is blue, and you know why? Because leader just decided to lead, and we took on these big fossil fuel companies. We have some of the most important and strongest laws in the country, and we made a difference. And my point being, I've done it before, and I will lead as president on this issue because we have no time. The clock is ticking, but we
bring
need
up the
courage
worry
and
case
we
when she
need
first starts off her
leadership.
speech. She
We
always,
can get this
oh
done.
my goodness,
Mr. Yang.
my what's this? Oh my goodness,
So to
my kids in the
follow up
future. She always try to,
Elizabeth said, why
she
are
be
we
sounding
losing
so
to the
fake all
fossil
the
fuel
time.
companies? Why are we losing to the gun lobby?
Here come
and the
Yang
NRA?
Gang.
And the answer is this. We all know, everyone on the stage knows, that our government has been overrun by money and corporate interests. Now, everyone here has a plan to try and curb those corporate interests, but we have to face facts. Money finds a way. Money will find its way back in. So what is the answer? The answer is to wash the money out with people-powered money. My proposal is that we give every American 100 democracy dollars that you can only give to candidates and causes that you like. This would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 8 to 1. That is the only way.
Hey, what's people power money? You ever heard that before?
President, I'll tell you, there's the people on one side and the money on the other. The only way for us to win is if we bring them together.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Lindsay.
I'd like to have an
You know what,
academic
Yang?
discussion now
Yang?
about education, Mr.
I'ma
Yang.
just put
We'll
I don't
stay
know on
with
that
you.
one.
Here in Houston, the school district is facing yet another year of spending cuts. Like schools across the country, the system faces many challenges. One of them, thousands of students are leaving traditional public schools and going to
bamboozle my brain. Gosh
You're
dang,
the
Yang.
most vocal proponent on this
putting them
stage
little
for charter schools.
mesmerizing
You said that
tricks on
Democrats
people's
who will
minds and
limit
stuff,
them
coming
are,
up with new
quote, just
terminologies
jumping
and
into
stuff.
bed with teachers unions and doing kids a disservice. Why isn't taxpayer money better spent on fixing traditional public schools?
Let me be clear, I am pro-good school. I've got a kid, one of my little boys just started public school last week, and I was not there because I was running for president. So we need to pay teachers more because the data clearly shows that a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold. We need to lighten up the emphasis on standardized tests, which do not measure anything fundamental about our character or human worth. But here's the big one. The data clearly shows that 65 to 70% of our students' outcomes are determined outside of the school. We're talking about time spent at home with the parents, words read to them when they're young, stress levels in the house, income, type of neighborhood. We're putting money into schools, and educators know this. We're saying you're 100% responsible for educating our kids, but you can only control 30%. They all know this. The answer is to put money directly into the families and neighborhoods to give our kids a chance to learn and our teachers a chance to teach.
30%, I don't know the actual number, but say it is.
Mayor
Take word for it
Buttigieg,
for now.
45 seconds to respond.
We're about to pause it very soon. Or pause the audio.
Step one is appoint a Secretary of Education who actually believes in public education. I believe in public education. And in order to strengthen it, some things are very complex for preparing for a future where knowledge is at your fingertips, but we've got to teach more to do with critical thinking and social and emotional learning. Some of it is extremely simple. We've just got to pay teachers more. And we've got to lift up the teaching profession. I always think of a story from South Bend of friends who hosted exchange students from Japan. They had a student one year who wanted to be a teacher, and they kept in touch with her when she went back to Japan and to college. She took the exam to try to become a teacher in a society that really regards teachers and compensates teachers well. And she came up just short. So you know what she did? Since she was academically good but couldn't quite make the cut to be a teacher, she had a fallback plan. She became a doctor. That is how seriously some countries treat the teaching profession. If we want to get the results that we expect for our children, we have to support and compensate the teaching profession.
Be right back. Battery died on my camera.
The way we do soldiers and pay
In the meantime,
them more like the way
we
we
just
do
make the screen
Senator
bigger.
Warren, to use Mr. Yang's term, are you just jumping into bed with teachers' unions?
You know, I think I'm the only person on the stage who has been a public school teacher. I've wanted to be a public school teacher since I was in second grade. And let's be clear in all the ways we talk about this, money for public schools should stay in public schools, not go anywhere else. I've already already made my commitment. We will have a Secretary of Education who has been a public school teacher. I think this is ultimately about our values. I have proposed a 2-cent wealth tax on the top 1/10 of 1% in this country. That would give us enough money to start with our babies by providing universal child care for every baby age 0 to 5, universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in this country, raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in this country,
at least an hour to get the other one, at least some charge of
cancel
time.
student loan debt for 95% of the folks who've got it.
Thank you, Senator.
And strengthen
I'll take an L. Tom Corner's taking an L for that one.
Build an America that reflects our values, not just where the money comes from with the billionaires and corporate executives.
Elizabeth, how did your students do when you was a teacher? I heard you say you was
My
a teacher.
first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. I think most of us would say that we are not where we are without the teachers who believed in us. I have offered in this campaign a proposal to deal with this, which will be the first in the nation federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap, which is $13,500 a year. Because right now in our public schools, our teachers, 94% of them are coming out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. And that is wrong. I also want to talk about where we are here at TSU and what it means in terms of HBCUs. I have, as part of my proposal, that we will put $2 trillion into investing in our HBCUs for teachers because one, as a proud graduate of a historically black college and university, I will say that it is our HBCUs that disproportionately produce teachers and those who serve in these many professions. But
Thank you, Senator.
But this is a critical point. If a black child has a black teacher before the end of 3rd grade, they are 13% more likely to go to college. If that child has had 2 black teachers before the end of 3rd grade, they are 32% more likely to go to college. So when we talk about investing in our public education system, it is at the source of so much. When we fix it, that will fix so many other things. We must invest in the potential of our children. And I strongly believe you can judge a society based on how it treats its children, and we are failing on this issue.
Guess what? You're guessing. All right, here's the answer. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and yet we have the highest child poverty rate of almost any country on earth. We have teachers in this country who are leaving education because they can't work 2 or 3 jobs to support themselves. Which is why, under my legislation, we will move to see that every teacher in America makes at least $60,000 a year. What we will also do is not only have universal pre-K, we will make public colleges and universities and HBCUs debt-free. And what we will also do, because this is an incredible burden on millions and millions of young people who did nothing wrong except try to get the education they need. We are going to cancel all student debt in this country.
Thank you, Senator.
And we are going to do that by imposing a tax on Wall Street speculation.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Vice President, I want to come to you and talk to you about inequality in schools and race. In a conversation about how to deal with segregation in schools back in 1975, you told a reporter, "I don't feel responsible for the sins of my father and grandfather. I feel responsible for what the situation is today, for the sins of my own generation, and I'll be damned if I feel responsible to pay for what happened 300 years ago." You said that some 40 years ago. But as you stand here tonight, what responsibility do you think that Americans have to repair the legacy of slavery in our country?
Well, they have to deal with look, there is institutional segregation in this country. And from the time I got involved, I started dealing with that. Redlining, banks, making sure that we are in a position
I only
where...
say that because
look,
you know how
talk
they
about
are.
education.
They be
I
going crazy
propose
for
that what we
anything you did
take
in
is
the
those
past.
very poor schools, the Title I schools, triple the amount of money we spend from $15 to $45 billion a year. Give every single teacher a raise to the equal raise of getting out the $60,000.
He's not addressing what she said,
Number
though.
two, make sure that we bring in to help the teachers deal with the problems that come from home. The problems that come from home, we have one school psychologist for every 1,500 kids in America today. It's crazy. The teachers are and I'm married to a teacher. My deceased wife is a teacher. They have every problem coming to them. We have to make sure that every single child does in fact have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds go to school, not daycare, school. We bring social workers into homes of parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. It's not that they don't want to help, they don't know quite what to do. Play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words. A kid coming from a very poor school, or a very poor background, will hear 4 million words fewer spoken by the time they get there. There's so much I'm going to go like the rest of them do, twice over, okay?
Fighty put his foot down on him, boy.
The deal is that we've got this a little backwards. And by the way, in Venezuela, we should be allowing people to come here from Venezuela. I know Maduro. I've confronted Maduro. Number two, you talk about the need to do something in Latin America. I'm the guy that came up with $740 million to see to it those 3 countries, in fact, change their system so people don't have a chance to leave. You're all acting like we just discovered this yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Secretary Castro.
Thank you very much. Well, that's quite a lot.
He shut it all down real
I
quick.
grew up in one of those neighborhoods that folks have talked about, in a neighborhood that was grappling with the legacy of segregation. In fact, in two public school districts that were involved in a 1973 Supreme Court case challenging how Texas financed its schools. And I know that today our schools are segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated. Now, I have an education plan, like a lot of folks up here, that would pay teachers more, that would recruit diverse ranks of teachers, that would invest in our public schools. But I also believe that we have to connect the dots.
They're talking about stuff that happened that they weren't a part of.
To uplift the quality of life, to invest in housing opportunity, to invest in job opportunity, to invest in community schools that offer resources like parents able to go back and get their GED, and healthcare opportunities, and those things that truly ensure that the entire family can prosper. Those are the types of things that we need to do, in addition to lifting up our public schools. You asked a second ago about charter schools. Look, it is a myth that charter schools are better than public schools. So far, we ain't got a copyright strike, y'all. So we must be doing good with the music.
Thank you, Secretary.
Well, I'm
gonna have to pause the audio real quick, though.
Charter schools, I would require.
Again, I have to pause the audio every once in a while because I got a copyright strike. Last time I streamed the Democratic debate, I think who was it? CNN. Yeah, I think CNN. I guess they got a in for it, so they struck me and they cut my live stream. So I pause the audio every once in a while to bypass that, or at least try to bypass it. I don't know what kind of algorithm they got going on now. But anyways, let's get back to this real quick. See what they're talking about now.
And I'm not just talking about the achievement gap, but I'm talking about the opportunity gap in education.
So I'm hearing a lot of conversations on the stage and the way we talk about communities of color. Look, I live in a black and brown community below the poverty line. I've lived in public housing projects almost for a decade and saw the anguish of parents who are just so deeply frustrated that they don't have a school that serves their genius. I think I'm the only person on the stage, even though I had no formal authority as mayor to run a school system, I stepped up and took responsibility for our schools. And we produced results. A lot of folks here talking about raising teacher salary. We actually did it in Newark, New Jersey. And we didn't stop there.
I was about to say that all these people talking,
we closed poor-performing charter schools, but dagnabbit, we expanded high-performing charter schools. We were a city that said we need to find local solutions that work for our community. The results speak for themselves. We're now the #1 city in America for beat-the-odds schools, from high poverty to high performance. Strategies like investing in our children work. And I'll tell you this, I am tired of us thinking about these problems isolated, disconnected from other issues. That's why my friend Secretary Castro is 100% right. We are in the reality we are right now because, Vice President, of overtly racist policies, not 400 years ago, just in my lifetime. that we're redlining communities, disinvesting in communities. And more than just that, my kids are not only struggling with racial segregation and housing and the challenges of underfunded schools, but they're also struggling with environmental injustice. If you've talked to someone who's a parent of a child who's had permanent brain damage because of lead, you'll know this is a national problem because there's over 3,000 jurisdictions in America where children have more than twice the blood lead levels of Flint, Michigan.
Thank you.
And so if I'm president of the United States, it is a holistic solution to education, from raising teacher salary, fully funded special education, but combating the issues of poverty, combating the issues of racial segregation, combating the issues of a criminal justice system that takes parents away from their kids, and dealing with environmental justice as a major pillar of any climate policy.
Thank you, Lindsay. One final question coming up. We'll be right back.
All right, that's a break. This is that pause button before I get that copyright strike in there. So, like I said, I was going to go back to what Yang said about the 30% of kids, or let's get this right. Yeah, 30% not having 30% not having any ability of like reading or being able to say certain words and vocabulary not being that good by the time they go to school. Exactly. Where exactly is that? Who's responsible for that? Like before somebody actually goes to school, like first grade, kindergarten, whatnot, who's there to allow for the kid to have a vocabulary, be able to count to whatever number, 50, 20, 100, whatever, right? Be able to say his ABCs, maybe say a few words, but heck, maybe even read a couple words, right? Who's responsible for that up until they go to school? Exactly, the parents. You can't sit there and tell me parents don't know how to read. Well, heck, maybe there's something isn't right, but if you don't know how to, you should be wanting your kid to be able to know how to, which means you should be trying to get in some help, or heck, there's plenty of stuff online. It's 2019, folks. There's no way you can't tell me you can't find somewhere for your kid to learn something, right? So it's up to the parents' responsibility, the guardian, whoever, to make sure your kid knows something before he even goes to preschool or preschool or first grade, right? So I always say this: if you have two kids, one kid who gets no training whatsoever when he's a kid, parents just raise him. Kid, all he knows how to do is cuss, fuss, get what he wants, start stuff, versus another kid who parents raising him right, teaching him his ABCs, teaching him how to count. He's getting that habit of learning, understanding how to learn, the difficulties of learning and getting stuff wrong. It's already in his head, being taught, having to respect, parents teaching him how to self-respect and respect others and all the other stuff. Yet other parent over here, this other family, kids over here, just parents ain't giving two craps, not teaching them anything, laughing at him when he cussing, fighting. So when they first go to school, they're in the same classroom, what happens? Teacher asking questions or trying to teach him. This kid over here is answering all the questions. This kid over here is like, I don't know anything. How does he know everything? Now the kid's thinking, am I stupid? Am I an idiot? And that's a mental thing. They can start acting up. Whose fault is that? It's not the teacher's fault. Teacher's like, now she's having to spend her time trying to, deal with the person causing all these issues, hampering the rest of the classroom. Let's not be crazy. It's not going to be one kid like that. It's going to be a lot of kids like that who don't know anything going into school because the parents didn't bother doing anything. So that's going to cause issues, a ripple effect. Boom, 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 boom. Something so small, just teaching the kid how to read, getting them used to learning, getting them used to failure at a young age. If you don't do that and throw them right into school, you're setting the kid up for failure, throw him in school, setting him up for failure, they don't know how to learn. They don't have the skill set of learning, skill set of failure. They don't have none of that. Versus a kid who already has that, who's going to succeed? Obviously, the chances of the kid who knows something going to school is going to succeed better than somebody not. So that's all on the kid. So education, small sample of learning at a young age can be very, very great. And he pretty much just gave you the stats right there. So what they've been saying all this time, the family matters. Biden was on her head, He said get programs to where people can come into people's houses and teach them how to raise kids. No, we don't need that. What we need is people know how to raise kids, right? You may struggle, but come on. Unless you want a kid growing up like an idiot, right? I'm sure you want to train your kid when they're small and young. But yeah. Exactly. We all have the same education, just more lies. We all do. We all had to say. Now, granted, some schools are worse than others, yeah. But in general, if you have kids, if there's one kid at one school, let's say everybody's just as poor as everybody else in the school. Let's say it's a really poor school, poor neighborhood. Had a little hiccup right there. I don't know what happened. I thought YouTube cut me short. I was about to say, no, YouTube got me again. Oh, no. Woo. We slid by that one, y'all. Woo. They all want to keep us poor and weak while they eat the porterhouse steak. This is true. Last steak I had was a hamburger steak. We all had the same. Yeah, but yeah, this is true. If you look out a lot of these poverty places like Baltimore, for instance, I don't know if you guys, we're going to unmute it in a real second, but I don't know if you guys seen that interview where, I don't know if he's like he wasn't like a mayor, he was some type of politician from Baltimore, and he was being interviewed by somebody, some news host was interviewing him, and they were saying, what was the issue with Baltimore? And he was saying, because of 400 years of racism. And he was like, but that was 400 years ago. What about now? Why are these areas still bad? He's like, I'm gonna keep going back to why I'm keep saying what I keep saying, because 400 years of racism. And I'm sitting there thinking like, wait a minute. So you have black neighborhoods in Baltimore who are doing horrible, yet there are also black neighborhoods in Baltimore where the average income is around $170,000. So I'm sure you are from the neighborhood or areas to where the black neighborhoods, you're living in an area where the average income is around $170,000. So how is it racism only affecting those areas but not your area? Something isn't right. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, you're right. They want to keep certain people poor while they eat all the good, delicious steak and eggs, right? And let's get back to let's unmute it, see what we got.
My dad had an expression. He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding whether you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up. And he used to say, never explain and never complain. And then go on to say that the only obligation that really matters, the most important thing, is family. And so I was raised to believe that that was the center of everything, family. And it could be judged on based how you treat your family and how you went from there. And it took, Kierkegaard said, faith sees best in the dark. Right after I got elected, my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident, and my two sons are badly injured. And I just been elected, not sworn in. And I lost my faith for a while. I came back. And then later, when my son Bo came home from Iraq and with a terminal disease, and a year and a half later, losing him was like losing part of my soul. But the fact is that I learned that the way you deal with it is you deal with finding purpose in what you do. And that's why I hope he's proud of me today, because he wanted to make sure I didn't run for president, but I stayed engaged. Because when you get hit badly, whether you're losing a job or you're raising a family like my dad, where you have to make that longest walk up the stairs to tell your kid you can't live here anymore, dad lost his job, we've all went through that in some form or another. And it just for me, the way I've dealt with it is finding purpose. And my purpose is do what I've always tried to do and stay engaged in public policy. But there's a lot of people that through a lot worse than I have, get up every single morning, put their feet one foot in front of another without the help I had. They're real heroes out there.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator Warren.
I mentioned earlier, I've known what I wanted to be since second grade. I wanted to be a public school teacher. And I invested early. I used to line my dollies up and teach school. I had a reputation for being tough but fair. By the time I graduated from high school, my family didn't have money for a college application, much less to send me off to 4 years at a university. And my story, like a lot of stories, has a lot of twists and turns. Got a scholarship, and then at 19, got married, dropped out of school, took a minimum wage job, thought my dream was over. I got a chance down the road at the University of Houston. And I made it as a special needs teacher. I still remember that first year as a special needs teacher. I could tell you what those babies looked like. I had 4 to 6-year-olds. But at the end of that first year, I was visibly pregnant. And back in the day, that meant that the principal said to me, wished me luck, and hired someone else for the job. So there I am. I'm at home, I got a baby, I can't have a job. What am I gonna do? Here's resilience. I said, I'll go to law school. And the consequence was, I practiced law for about 45 minutes, and then went back to my first love, which is teaching. But it let me get into fights, it gave me new tools, and the reason I'm standing
We're going to get back
today
to this. This is very important.
because I got back up, I fought
She's saying
back.
something that she's not trying
I
to
know
preach to
what's
everybody else to
broken.
do,
I want to be
which
in
is
the
kind of
fight to
ridiculous.
fix it in America.
What she's saying is good,
That's why I'm here.
but the overall
Senator Sanders.
agenda that they're trying, not agenda, but their
means
beliefs is not
growing
what
up in a rent-controlled
portraying upon everybody else that how they want
apartment
everybody else to be.
Brooklyn, New York.
We'll get back to that. Well, Elizabeth said what she said is good.
Who came to this country without a nickel in his pocket. Professional resilience means to me, George, running for U.S. Senate in Vermont and getting 1% of the vote.
But her actions aren't the same.
Running for governor and getting 2% of the vote. Finally becoming mayor of Burlington, Vermont with 10 vote margin. What resilience means to me is that throughout my political career, I have taken on virtually every powerful special interest in this country. Whether it is Wall Street, whether it is the insurance industry, whether it is the pharmaceutical industry whose corruption and greed is killing people today, whether it is a military-industrial complex or a prison-industrial complex. And I feel confident that given a lifelong record of taking on powerful special interests, of standing up for the working families of this country, that I will be able to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and create a government and an economy that work for all of us, not just the 1%.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Senator Harris.
Hope that didn't help.
You know, every office I've run for, whether it be district attorney or attorney general, I was told each time, it can't be done. They said, nobody like you has done it before. Nobody's ready for you. When I ran for DA, I won and became the first black woman elected DA in a state of 40 million people in San Francisco. When I ran for Attorney General of California, I was elected because I didn't listen. And I was the only woman black elected Attorney General in the state, in the country. And each time people would say, it's not your time, it's not your turn, it's gonna be too difficult, they're not ready for you. And I didn't listen, and a part of it probably comes from the fact that I was raised by a mother who said many things that were life lessons for me, including don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are. You tell them who you are.
I guess I ain't gonna be able to do that. I'm
And
adjusting myself,
when I look around the town halls that we do in this race for President of the United States, and I look at the meetings that we do in the community meetings, and I see these little girls and boys, sometimes even brought by their fathers, and they bring them to me, and I talk to them during these events, and they smile, and they're full of joy, and their fathers tell them, see, don't you ever listen and let anybody ever tell you what you can or cannot be. You have to believe in what can be, unburdened by what has been.
Senator Harris, thank you very much. Mayor Buttigieg.
You know, as a military officer serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and as an elected official in the state of Indiana when Mike Pence was governor, at a certain point, when it came to professional setbacks, I had to wonder whether just acknowledging who I was going to be the ultimate career-ending professional setback. I came back from the deployment and realized that you only get to live one life, and I was not interested in not knowing what it was like to be in love any longer. So I just came out. I had no idea what kind of professional setback it would be, especially because, inconveniently, it was an election year in my socially conservative community. What happened was that when I trusted voters to judge me based on the job that I did for them, they decided to trust me and reelected me with 80% of the vote. And what I learned was that trust can be reciprocated, and that part of how you can win and deserve to win is to know what's worth more to you than winning. And I think that's what we need in the presidency right now. We have to know what we are about. And this election is not about any of us up here. It is not about this president, even though it's hard to talk of anything else some days. It's about the people who trust us with their lives. A kid wondering if we're actually going to make their schools safe when they've learned active shooter drills before they've learned to read. A generation wondering whether we will actually get the job done on climate change. And if we hold to that, then it doesn't matter what happens to each of us professionally. Together, we will win a better era for our country.
Mayor Buttigieg, thank you. Mr. Young.
I was an unhappy lawyer for 5 whole months, and I left to start a business. And I'm going to share with you all one of the secrets to entrepreneurship. If you want to start something, tell everyone you know you're going to do it. And then you don't have a choice. You put your heart and soul into it, and even though I did that, my company flopped, had its mini rise and maximum fall, lost investors hundreds of thousands of dollars, still owed $100,000 in school debt. My parents still told people I was a lawyer. I guess it was a little easier. So I remember lying on my floor looking up, wondering how it had come to this. Eventually, I picked myself back up. I kept working in small growth companies for another 10 years and eventually had some success. Then after I did have some success, I still remembered how hard it was, how isolating it was, how it feels like your friends no longer want to spend time with you. And so I spent 7 years starting and running a nonprofit that helped train young entrepreneurs around the country, including Sean Wen, who's here in the audience tonight, who left his gilded Wall Street job to become a food entrepreneur in San Antonio. Sean, I hope I made the process a little bit easier for you than it was for me. But the goal of my campaign is to make this an economy that allows us to live our human values and aspirations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yang. Senator Booker.
So my biggest professional setback is embarrassing because a lot of folks know about it. I, with a bunch of tenant leaders in Newark, New Jersey in 2002, took on the political machine, and boy, did they fight back. I had tires on my car slashed, our campaign offices were broken into, my phones were tapped. It became a spectacle, and we lost that election. And here's a bit of advice to everybody. If you're gonna have a spectacular failure, have a documentary team there to capture it, because it made for an Oscar-nominated documentary called Street Fight. But then, unfortunately, another setback, it lost in the Oscars to a movie called March of the Dagnab Penguins, for crying out loud. The people in my community, living in the projects, told me, don't give up on the people, and the people won't give up on you.
Today.
Create bigger and bolder coalitions, and you're going to win. And you know what? We came back 4 years later and won the largest lopsided victory in our city's history. But more than that, the lesson was there. We didn't give up. We were taking on America's toughest problems, from crime to poverty, and we transformed our city, creating tens of thousands of new jobs, the biggest economic expansion in our city, and as I said before, turned around our school system. There's more work to do, but I haven't given up on the people. I still live in that community. But this is the big lesson. My staff and my friends and my community told me, if you want to go fast, you may have won the mayor's race, but that's not what life is about. There's an old African saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. The lesson I learned of resilience is to trust people, because the power of the people is always greater than the people in power. And the test of America right now, it's not a referendum on Donald Trump, it's a referendum on us and who we are and who we're going to be together. We need to use this moment in history to unite in common
smartest thing I've ever heard Booker say.
Purpose, and then
I'm gonna give him a W for this little speech
together as a nation.
Senator Booker, thank you. Congressman O'Rourke.
He didn't say nothing crazy. He didn't try to put a victim thing. He just went straight with
everything that I've
stuff,
learned about
they're talking about the person life. That's why.
I've learned from my hometown,
so we're gonna get on
this
after
Texas. In the face of this act of terror that was directed at our community in large part by the President of the United States, that killed 22 people and injured many more, We were not defeated by that, nor were we defined by that.
I had to reset my
The very
camera.
thing that drew
Back on
that
now.
killer to us is the very thing that helps us set the example for the rest of this country. We don't see our differences as disqualifying or dangerous. We see them as foundational to our success, to our strength, and to our security, and to our safety. Yesterday, I was visiting with one of those victims. He's the head coach of the Fusion. This is a girls' soccer team of 10 and 11-year-old girls. His name is Luis. He was shot in the legs multiple times. He was shot in the side multiple times. He's still healing from his wounds in the hospital, but from his hospital bed, he's still trying to coach the Fusion girls' soccer team. Memo, his co-coach, is still fighting for his life right now at Del Sol Hospital. Those two men, Jessica and Marcella, their wives, they exemplify resilience to me. And when we end this scourge of gun violence in this country, when we finally confront the racism that exists in America, when we're defined not by our fears, but instead by our aspirations.
Why didn't I talk about the one that happened in
It will be in large part, I think, thanks to the example that El Paso has set.
Congressman,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
They're not talking about the one where the dude cited Elizabeth Warren. He was for them.
My challenges and resilience have brought me up here. I grew up with a dad who struggled with alcoholism his whole life, and after his third DWI, he had a choice between jail and treatment. He chose treatment with his faith, with his friends, with our family, and in his words, he was pursued by grace. And that made me interested in public service because I feel like everyone should have that same right to be pursued by grace. I then got married. My husband's out there somewhere, hopefully smiling, and our daughter. And our daughter was born. I had this expectation we were going to have this perfect birth, and she was really sick, and she couldn't swallow, and she was in and out of hospitals for a year and a half. But when she was born, they had a rule in place that you got kicked out of the hospital in 24 hours. She was in intensive care, and I was kicked out. And I thought, this could never happen to any other mom again. So I went to the legislature, our state legislator, not an elected official, a mom, and I advocated for one of the first laws in the country guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. And when they tried to delay the implementation of that law, I brought 6 pregnant friends to the conference committee, so they outnumbered the lobbyists 2 to 1. And when they said, when should it take place, they all raised their hand and said, now. That is what motivated me to go into public service. And when I got to that gridlock of Washington, D.C., I got to work and pass over 100 bills. And I know a lot of my friends here from the left, but remember, I am from the middle of the country. And I believe if we're going to get things done, that we have to have someone leading the ticket with grit. Someone's going to not just change the policies, but change the tone in the country, and someone who believes in America and believes it from their heart because of where they came from, that everyone should have that same opportunity.
Senator, thank you. Secretary Castro.
And thank you, George, to Jorge, to Lindsay, and to David, and to all of y'all for tuning in tonight. In many ways, I shouldn't be here on this stage. You know, Castro is my mother's name and was my grandmother's name before her. I grew up in a single-parent household on the west side of San Antonio, going to the public schools. Eventually, my brother Joaquin and I became the first in our family to become professionals. And when I got home, I took a job at the biggest law firm in town. I was making $100,000 a year in the year 2000. A few months later, I got elected to the San Antonio City Council. And the City Council at the time was only paying $1,040 a year. So everybody had another job, and my job was at the law firm.
Speeches are doing
well, a few months after I got elected, the law firm got a client. And the client wanted those of us on the City Council to vote for a land deal. The land deal was that they wanted to build a golf course over our water supply.
She gave her good little speech.
Because we
They're all
an
good
underground
speeches.
aquifer. I didn't think the environmental protection plan was strong enough, so I wanted to vote against it. And my constituents wanted me to vote against it. But under the ethics rules for lawyers in Texas, because believe it or not, lawyers
very
have
good
ethics
speeches.
rules,
They're all given. I'm not going to lie. They're all
you can't
W's.
just go against the interests of the client. So I was stuck.
I don't know if Bernie spoke or not yet, but
on the one hand, I wanted to do the right thing. On the other hand, my livelihood, my student loans, my new house payment, my car payment depended on me shutting up, being conflicted out. So one day I walked into my law firm and I quit my job. And then I went and I voted against that land deal on the city council. And, you know, It was the first test that I had, and I think back to that because oftentimes we think of politics and you think of politics as dirty or corrupting. I wondered before I went in it whether it would change who I was. And I was proud that when that first test came, that I stood up for the people that I was there to represent and not for big special interests. There's nobody that gets tested more
besides
in
that,
a position
right?
of public trust
something else
than the President of the United States. This president has failed that test. But I want you to know that if you elect me president, I won't. I won't serve anybody.
I wonder if there's like a
except
light that
you
flashes on the
and your
camera that
family.
lets them know which
And
one's the
together,
active camera.
We can create an America that's better than ever. Thank you very much.
Castro, thank you to all of our candidates. It was a great debate. I think we learned a lot tonight. Thanks to you.
So that's the debate,
Thanks
you all.
to
That's
Texas
it.
Southern University for hosting us tonight. It was a great crowd. Thank you. As well tonight.
We're going to stop it right there. We're just going to pause the audio. We'll let the video continue, but we're going to pause the audio.
Continues with Tom Yamas.
And that's it. Actually, I think this probably added so the first debate they had, the first round of debates they had a couple months ago was just ridiculous. The last debate, second round of debates, was better, I thought. This one, way more calmer than first two. The second one I thought was the best one, I think, second round. But this one wasn't too bad, but whatever. Again, so like I was just saying, though, so these are their final speeches, moments. One thing that was a little crazy was, did you all notice something about each candidate's final words or moments, whatever you want to call it, right? They all had a struggle, just like almost everybody in America. Not everybody, of course, there are a lot of wealthy people. There are wealthy people in America who grow up wealthy and stuff like that, who don't really have that much struggle, but I'm not saying that the parents spoil them, but you do have the ones who spoil them. And also people who aren't wealthy, you also have parents who aren't wealthy who still spoil their kids in what way they can. But regardless, notice the theme of their final moments right here. They had struggles. Some of them had some people bringing them down. Some people had people doubting them. So others had people discriminating against them, whether it be for not discrimination, or some discrimination, I guess, called discrimination. Others had people not believing in them or not giving them any chances, or because they're female and pregnant, they got fired from not fired, but let go from their job or whatever you want to call it. But what was the theme though? They all decided to put on their pants, forget what people said, forget the people who doubted them. They sucked it up and they went back to work. They got back to work. They spent their own time, energy, and whether they had to work harder at things, whether they had to put their mind to something, whether they had to sacrifice something, whether they had to get help from somebody else, some of them even had money to get better, which allowed them to get further at things. Whatever the case may be, they were able to fight through it. Right? They weren't begging for stuff. They weren't being victims of anything. They said, dang, I didn't realize that. I got beat down. Let me get back up on my feet and go forward. Try to push further. Look at what they're actually trying to push as far as their policies and things of that nature. It's exactly the opposite of that. Like Holden Caulfield says here in the comment section, we all have the same education. They're trying to keep us poor and weak while they eat that porthouse steak. So what the policies they're trying to push are the exact opposite of trying to work hard, trying to get better at what you do. Because if you look at it, it's like at some point in time, somebody gets put down, whether it's of the same race, the opposite race, same sex, opposite sex, whether it's somebody of your same cultural background, different cultural background, same country, different person from the same country as you, different country as you. A lot of people be put down by somebody else, right? And almost everybody has, right? Whether you're going through school, age, business, school, friendship, whatever it is, right? Most people, almost everybody, I would say, has been put down by somebody. It's up to the person, though, whether they get past that, suck it up, just ignore it, or whatever the case may be. Like me, I know I've had people put me down or people discriminate, whatever the case may be. But you know what? It's like, whatever. Okay, cool. You want to do it? Not cool, but not cool. But what you want me to do? Soak about it? Sit down and cry about it? No. And that's what the candidates just pretty much just said. We didn't sit down and cry about it. We got up and we just said, screw it. We're going to go at it anyways. We're going to fight harder. But what they're telling everybody else to do, though, is if you've had anybody put you down, anybody discriminate against you, that means for you to just sit down and just want everything handed to you. Don't have to work for anything. Don't worry about it. We got you covered. We'll pay for everything. If you had any time in your life where you were put down, somebody talked about you, somebody called you this or that, somebody told you couldn't make it, you couldn't do it, that means justifiable for you to just say, give me everything I want then, because I had this one time, this person told me no. Yet here they are telling everybody, I struggled, I had these hard moments, and I personally took it upon myself to get past that burden. And that's what I'm saying. Very good last moment speeches. They all were good. But the only problem with it is they're not telling everybody else to do that. They're telling everybody else, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You can't fix it. Let me fix it. You don't worry about doing anything better. You don't worry about going a hard road, putting in the work. Don't worry about it. We'll just give it to you easily. We're promising you we're going to give it to you. We'll fix your problem for you. Don't you worry about fixing your own problem. Don't you worry about handling somebody bringing you down. Not saying don't go seek any help or take help when it's given to you, but don't wait for it either. And they're telling people to wait for help. They're telling you, don't worry about it, just wait for help. Versus what they did when they just said, screw it, I'm going to do it anyways. Or screw it, I can make it if I just put my mind to it. That's what they did. That's pretty much what each one of their last speeches was about. Yet what they're telling other people to do is quite opposite. And that's all I had to say about that. Their last speeches, good speeches, but that's not what they're telling people to do, which to me is kind of strange and weird. You're telling people how you survive criticism, in an instance, some of them racism, others just people putting them down, telling them that they couldn't do it, not trying to help them out, and them striving past that and getting past that and doing it anyways, being successful at it, right? Taking the failures and getting better at it. Yet telling the rest of America, don't do what I did to succeed. I'll fix your succession and make sure you can succeed based off how I think you should succeed. So wait for me to give you something for free or whatever the case may be. Anyways, that's what I saw. That's what I take out of their last speeches or their last say, is that they were good, actually really good, better than all their other ones. I have to say that these final words they gave tonight were better than the first two sessions of debates, first two go around. So I give them that. But anyways, true. Or they all sold out to get where they are now. That's possible too. And I bet that's probably the case because we all know they like to put them nice stories out there and make it seem like, yeah, it's either the story they put out that's really ridiculous, that probably is nothing true about it, or way out of context, or they're really lying. So, but some of those stories seem a little legit. But again, it's like, it seems legit, but you're not preaching that to everybody else. You're not telling everybody else that you can do what I did if you put your mind and work to it. So it's like, what is it? It's like this. If you grew up in a poverty place, how did you get out of poverty? And if that's how you got out, why aren't you preaching that to everybody else to follow your path instead of telling everybody else to complain about it? Why don't you tell everybody else to get out of it how you got out of it? That's all I'm saying. If you were in poverty and got out of it, if you were facing racism and got out of it, then instead of telling everybody else, don't do what I did, just complain about it. You can't do nothing about it. There's nothing you can do about it. Just wait for us to come save you to get out of it. Why don't you just tell everybody else how you did it and follow in your footsteps instead of... That's not what they're doing. They're not directing people on how to get out of it. They're directing people and telling people opposite of what they did. But anyways, it's time out corner for the second round Democratic debates. I didn't do it how I wanted to again. I had to pause it every once in a while because, again, they got me with a copyright strike. But this time around, we were clean, good to go. No no issues this time around. I'm glad too, because though when I'm looking at my video, it doesn't look that clear. Let me change the quality. Okay, that's a little better. Still looks kind of bad. I guess it's good enough. Oh well. Okay, there we go. But yeah, that's it for this debate. Wasn't too bad of a debate. Not too crazy. Oh yeah, I'll give that one to Elizabeth Warren. I forgot who I gave it to. I forgot who I gave the W to last time. Oh no, I gave it to. He wasn't in debate today. He didn't make the debates today. But I'll give this one to Warren. She actually had some good points. She wasn't really blaming. She wasn't doing the old tactic of trying to put everything on everybody else, Trump and that nature. She just went out and said what she had to say, and they made, like what she said with the trading with, China, other countries, with the trade and changing trade policies with other countries, saying that other countries need to be more fair. They need to put up fix their issues with workers, spending crazy hours, not getting paid enough. Some countries where people work them to death. People get worked to death. She was saying how other countries need to fix some of the issues with their people who work, their policies in that nature before they start doing business with us, and also IP, intellectual property. So she didn't really attack anybody when she was talking about that, in a sense, like saying it's Trump's fault or whatnot. So I thought that was cool, good. Like I said, first time I ever gave Elizabeth Warren a W, and she got another W. Actually, she got 3 W's, and another one when she was talking about the war, bringing people back, been there too long and all that good stuff. She didn't say nothing too crazy on there. It made sense. And also, okay, she gets a W there. And she also got a W when she was talking about, actually, that wasn't her. This was, so she got 2 W's. And I do not remember who got this W right here. I forgot who it was. But anyways, it was a good debate. I give that one to Elizabeth Warren this time around. To me, she sounded good. She gets the W, for this one around. I did miss like the first 40 minutes because I was trying to fix my computer. It was all messed up. Anyways, but from what I did watch here, she was pretty not too much crying this time around. Let's put it that way. But as usual, though, I still don't think that's enough for anything, really. These debates, they're more like they try too hard. They're trying too hard, right, to try to balance out how they can bash Trump and blame him or say whatever it is versus like the shootings, constantly trying to say Trump's responsible for that stuff. I'm like, I don't see it. Like, one of the shooters who shot it was in Ohio. He literally was following Elizabeth Warren and I think Kamala Harris or some other person, right? I can't remember exactly what other politician or media outlet person they were following, but I'm not going to sit there and blame Warren or Kamala Harris or whoever else that one shooter was following because he was following them and liked them and liked how they spoke and liked their rhetoric, whatnot. I'm not going to blame them for that. That's just that's idiocy right there, right? That's just stupid. Unless she specifically called out violence like that to that nature, I'm not going to blame Elizabeth Warren for that Ohio shooting, right? Even though the shooter clearly was following them and liked them and was a leftist person, a crazy leftist person that, obviously because he went up and shot up a place, right? Just like the person who, I guess, supported Trump was a crazy person on the right? So I'm not going to sit there and blame Trump for that. Just like I'm not going to blame Elizabeth Warren for the other shooter. It's idiocy. It's careless to me, and it's pretty stupid and dumb. Like, it doesn't make any sense. To me, that's just one of those ways this person, Beto, who was it, Beto? He's just playing on the field of. It's sort of like, when the NFL was kneeling. I was cool with Kaepernick doing that. I didn't care. Like, okay, that's how you want to protest. Cool, no problem, right? I think I know why Kaepernick did it now that I know the full story. Right, but It's when everybody else started doing it. All the teachers, all these politicians started kneeling. All these famous people, Hollywood people started kneeling. Like, look at me. At that point, I was like, okay, this is obviously you guys are just doing it. That's it for this camera. Wait, no. Is it back? It's back. I was like, obviously you guys are just doing it because it's just the trend. It's the thing to do now. You're not doing it because you care or anything like that. You don't believe this. You're just doing it because everybody else is doing it, and you want to jump on a bandwagon. You want that attention. You want people to now follow you to do it. So same thing here, right? Because the shooting, why not just blame Trump for it, right? Why not? Why not just blame Trump for it? Everybody else is doing it. It's going to get me more attention. It's going to make me feel more, whatever they, I don't know what it is, right? To me, it's stupid. And just like the NFL kneeling thing, what happened when the kneeling stopped in the NFL? Something miraculously happened, people. When the players stopped kneeling in the NFL, what happened after that? Nothing. No famous politician or no famous person, no politician, all those teachers, whoever else was kneeling for the pure comedy of it, for the pure attention of it, they stopped their caring of the issues that Kaepernick was kneeling for, right? The supposed issues he was kneeling for, right? You don't just stop caring about something because the NFL stops kneeling. If you really care about it that much, you would continue your call for those things, right? You would create your own company, nonprofit organization, create your own social media page, or some people are really famous. They create a social media page like that, they're gonna have millions of followers. You didn't see anybody like that create a page about the issues that Kaepernick was talking about. All those famous people, all those media outlets, not one of those, you had a couple, maybe one or two or three, but there were a whole bunch of them. Not one of them did anything after the kneeling stopped. It was crickets. Crickets. And the only time you hear somebody talk about it now is when something happens, when somebody don't go through Kaepernick about the NFL. That's the only time you hear about somebody now. Other than that, everybody's crickets. So at that point, I was like, it's clearly none of you guys really cared about anything. You were just doing it because it got major attention. If that never got any attention in the NFL, you wouldn't have seen any politicians, any famous person kneeling too, because they would have been like, whatever. It's not enough attention for me, right? So that's what I see about that shooting thing is you're only blaming this person because you know you're going to get all that attention. So you're going to play on it. And to me, it's sick. I don't like it. It's sick. But anyways, people, that's it for this show. Battery's dead. And, yeah, it's dead. So I'm going to get out of here now. Thanks for watching. And Holden Cauleyfield, thanks for the comments. Nice chat. And everybody else in the chat window as well. It's Time My Corner. Talk News. We're heading out. See Bernie Sanders up there. Oh, yeah, Bernie Sanders, Trump, and what's his name from Brexit? Boris. Y'all got some crazy hairstyles, man. Y'all be looking like y'all just woke up and said, F it. Just gonna go straight to work. And they be having some crazy hairdos, man. Especially Boris, man. His hair be looking crazy. I'm like, gosh dang, Boris. You look like it. I bet Boris, Trump, and Sanders, they wake up, their hair looking clean. Hair be looking all nice. They get a brush and mess it up on purpose, man, because ain't no way. They do the opposite of hair brushing. I don't know what it is, especially Boris, man. That hair, Boris' hair look crazy, man. I'll be laughing. Let me get all three of them up real quick before we close this out. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about. Look at his hair, man. Look at his hair. Man, you gotta be kidding me, man. Boris, what is this, man? What is this? Man, you got to be kidding. That look like my hair, man. You know what I say? I let the wind comb my hair. What is this? I said I was going to go, but we got to check these hairstyles out real quick. Oh, we got GQ Boris over here. Yeah. Oh man. Boris don't care. Look at G. Look at and then we got angry Boris. Oh man. Anyways, let's go check out Bernie Sanders' hair. Boy, Bernie Sanders' hair, he look like he don't even supposed to be there. He got shocked by electrocution. I was just about to say he looked like dude from Back to the Future, and there he is, right next to him. They know they crazy, man. Let's check out Trump's hair. Man. What is this? Hold up. What the heck is this? Oh, man. These dudes is funny, man. I don't know who wins, man. Is it Trump, Boris, or Bernie? Bernie's look the weirdest because he has the shortest amount of hair, yet it's still looking like static electric. Anyways, we out of here, y'all. For real. We done. We're gonna cut. We done with the live stream. Anyways, Time Out Corner. Thanks for checking in. And Time Out Corner out. Talk news.